Ian, hello. Let's get to the big news. On Canada Day, the Nashville Predators have made 3 men, all of whom I believe are Canadian. Brady Shea's Canadian, right? Okay. 2 Canadians and 1 American. Very, very rich people, though these people were already rich ahead of time. But they continue to be so with the signings of Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea to the Nashville Predators. By the way, and I am going to take a little bit of a victory lap here, Andrew Brunette will join us at 5 o'clock on the program. Barry Trotz will have a press conference, and Barry Trotz will join us, Barry Trotz, we will run that press conference at 4 o'clock. So Barry at 4 in his press conference, Andrew Brunette on the program at 5 o'clock. Now, we told you on Friday the Predators were in play for Steven Stamkos. We said, we went over the numbers. Ian, did we not? We said 4 by 8.25. It ended up being 4 by 8. What we were not prepared for was Jonathan Marchessault. Now, we talked about Jonathan Marchessault as a potential addition in case they missed out on Stamkos. But I didn't even really think that Marchessault was an option until all that wheeling and dealing Tampa Bay did Saturday afternoon, where they moved Sergachev. I was shocked by that, by the way. They moved Sergachev in order to create cap space, and I thought, oh, there goes Stamkos. Well, maybe they could go get Marchessault as a consolation prize. And Barry Trotz got them both. And he added Brady Shea, who they were in on the whole time. And they re-signed Alexander Carrier. And they got the backup goalie. And was this not the backup goalie we were talking about on Friday, Scott Wedgwood? But he was the one we put on the board. And they ended up signing Scott Wedgwood as well. So the Nashville Predators, wheeling and dealing today, all that money, all those names. And here's my reaction to it. We'll take yours today at 615-737-1025. Our text line is down today, so if you want to get your thoughts, you got to call, or I guess use the YouTube chat. That still works, right, Ian? Okay, the YouTube chat, I guess it'll be. Barry Trotz decided today he's trying to win the cup. And everybody says they want to win a championship. Everybody says we're building towards winning a championship, everybody. But today, Barry Trotz told you, the fans, I am trying. For 2028. That's for 2029. The moves today, they're for 2025. Then that leads me to this question. Does signing 30-year-olds and maxing out the cap on guys who have won in the past but currently aren't winning, does that provide an avenue to the cup? Because that's the gamble that Barry Trotz is taking today. He is looking at Marchessault, at Stamkos, at Brady Shea, all core players inside of their 30s, and he's adding them to the 3 guys he has said several times on this program are core players to this team. Forsberg, Josi, and Saros. Those are the 3 guys he said were core players, and he's added 3 more. Throw in O'Reilly, because I do feel like he really does view O'Reilly as a core piece to this team, and O'Reilly signed for the next 3 years. That's the core of the team. And he is saying, with his actions, I can win a cup with those guys. The real question, as far as the gamble's concerned, is can you? Because when a lot of these guys win the Stanley Cup, I looked it up today, Sidney Crosby's last cup came at 29. Patrick Kane's last cup came at 27. Jonathan Toews was 26. Vladimir Tarasenko was 28. Ovechkin was 32. McKinnon was 26. These guys are older than that. And that's the risk Barry Trotz is taking today. But I love the idea. I love the idea of going and getting guys who are winners at heart. The Predators, by acquiring Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea all on the free agent market, and not using a single draft pick to acquire them means that all those things they had for the future, they still have. All those assets they built up with that sell-off 2 years ago or last season, I guess 2 seasons ago at the deadline, the Ekholm deal, the Granlund deal, the Jeannot deal, which has, by the way, aged horrendously for Tampa Bay. They finally got out of it over the weekend. But all those trades, Niederreiter, all those trades at the end of that year, they still have the foundation. They still have 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. They still have Matthew Wood and Tanner Mullendijk and Joakim Kimmel and Yaroslav Askarov, and they still have all the young guys. So I think the idea Barry Trotz is rolling with is, I am going for the next 4 years, because that's how long Stamkos' deal is. O'Reilly's got 3 more, that for the intermediate, the immediate to intermediate, Barry Trotz is rolling with veteran winners. And his hope is that just a little bit of that winning dust will wear off on Luke Evangelista and Tanner Mullendijk and Spencer Stastny and any of these other young guys they bring up, Zachary Leroux, Fedor Svechkov, the young guys he's talked about bringing up, that winning dust gets on those guys, and that in the immediate, they can win games because he's still banking that Stamkos, who scored 40 goals last year, Marchessault, who was the Conn Smythe 2 years ago, Brady Shea, who is a legitimate top-pair defenseman, that those guys still got game. Just like Ryan O'Reilly proved last year when he showed up out of free agency, that he's still got game. These guys are winners. No disrespect, but there's a reason why Barry Trotz doesn't want Matt Duchene. And that reason is because all of Matt Duchene's, with the exception of Dallas, and he's not really a core player in Dallas, he's more of a secondary player in Dallas, but all of Matt Duchene's teams get better the day he leaves. That's why Barry Trotz didn't want him anymore. That's why Ryan Johansson made it through half a season with the Avalanche. No disrespect to him, but that's why he made it through half a season before they were like, get him out of here. Barry wants winners, and these guys are winners. Especially Marchessault, O'Reilly, and Stamkos. Those guys are winners. All 3 of those guys are capable of being captain of your team. And none of them will be captain of this team because that's going to be Yossi. O'Reilly is a winner. Stamkos is a winner. Marchessault is a winner. And at the same time, Barry Trotz, again, because he's not afraid to do something unpopular or to take, as he would say, a big swing. I think the Predators have a great coach because of the move Barry Trotz was willing to make, the move that a lot of hockey people did not like. And I bet you there were a lot of people inside the Preds building at the time that were probably trying to push Barry Trotz in the direction of keeping John Hynes. But Barry said, no. I want an offensive coach. And he went out and got a guy I think is a great head coach. I thought Andrew Brunette, when his system really clicked last year with those guys, that's when they took off. And he's a great offensive coach. He's a great power play. And Barry Trotz went out today and just got him a guy in Steven Stamkos who is going to make that power play better overnight. Adding Stamkos to that power play, I think, wins you the Vancouver series. And again, he scored 40 goals last year. I just keep playing around with the lines in my head. And I keep thinking about how last year, what was our biggest criticism of the Predators? It was that they only had one line that could score. You know, every now and then, Kiefer Sherwood would have a 2-goal night, or they'd get a big goal from Cole Smith or Sissons or something like that. But in the NHL, you need consistent goal scoring. Well, now they have a second line that can score. And I know because they've been doing it for a decade, each of them, in the NHL at the highest level possible. The reality in all of sports, I don't care if it's hockey, baseball, basketball, football, it doesn't. The reality is, if you win, they love you. If you lose, they hate you. You all know that. I know that. We all know that. What do we always say when it comes to the Predators? We want to win. We don't want to almost win. Barry Trotz is loved right now, but he won't be if they lose. But he is betting that the makeup and the talent of Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Luke Shen, the guys he's added, he is betting that that is enough to overcome their age and the tread on the tires. Now, is he right? I hope he's right. As a fan, I'm not going to lie, I'm excited today. I have some reservations, but I am excited today because, again, Barry Trotz just told all of us. I'm a season ticket holder just like a lot of you. Barry Trotz told us today, guys, I'm trying to win the cup next year. And he didn't sacrifice anything in the future other than cap space in order to do it. So we talked about tearing it down. And I wanted to tear it down in the middle of 2022, 2023. I thought they needed to tear it down. I thought they should tear it down. And they kind of tore it down a little bit. But right now, I'm looking at a team that they are trying to build up as a cup contender for 25 and 26. And I see all the young assets that are cooking in the minors, as Barry said, not going to microwave them, not going to bring them up in the pros, but cooking them in the minors, cooking them in the juniors, all the draft picks. And that's what he's planning on being the difference in 2028 and 2029 and as they go. It's a plan that makes sense. Is it a plan that will work? I don't know. Is it a plan that is feasible in terms to win a cup with guys in their mid-30s with a core of dudes that are 30 or older? I don't know. But that's the risk he's taking today. 615-737-1025. Again, our text line is down today, so you're going to have to call, or we'll use the YouTube chat at some point. 615-737-1025. I did start to put the lines together. Got a little excited about that. I did start to put these lines together, and that's actually, we were talking today about, do you want to see Barry Trotz come on the show? Do you want to see? And I said, well, what if Barry Trotz is going to talk at 4 o'clock? Let's put Andrew Brunette on the show today because I want to know how he's going to deploy these different guys. But I am very, very excited. And I was very excited to start jotting names down. So we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 on Canada Day, on Predators Free Agent Frenzy Day. It's still Company 1025 again.
what else factors in the decision? Obviously, the money's great. The city, when you're weighing and looking at these possibilities, in the end, why Nashville?
Well, I think like you said, you have to look at a multitude of factors, especially when you're in the position that I am. Obviously I have 3 kids, I have a family, I have other priorities other than myself that I need to think of. But first and foremost, it's going to an organization that is committed to winning. I think you can already tell for how aggressive they've been today, how much that means to them. Obviously the city is a fantastic city, very familiar with a lot of players that absolutely love playing there. The money is the money. It's not the end all be all, but it's a part of it. But I just think the fit for myself as an individual, as a player, and then the fit for my family, it checked all those boxes. You have a list of things, of priorities that you want when you get into a situation like free agency and being on a playoff contender that has a chance to win a Stanley Cup, going to an organization that is willing to commit to adding pieces and adding players and constantly getting better. Obviously, being in a great place to raise a family. And like I said, Nashville just kept checking those boxes. And each time we kind of went back around, they were always coming out on top. And it made the decision that much easier, like I said, because they had that mutual interest as well.
There you go. That was Steven Stamkos earlier today on TSN talking about, hey, man, Nashville, they've got this, they've got that, they've got this. The money was good. Barry Trotz said, hey, I'll give you $8 million a year for 4 years. Tampa, no interest in Stamkos, which, by the way, is a concern that I do have. Now, I know a lot of people can say, oh, Jared's just today, just celebrating how great everything is with the Preds. He's just easy now. Again, it's risky. These guys are not 27. I do want to amend something that I said, or at least add context to it, when I was talking about these guys winning the Cup, and I mentioned Tarasenko, and people were like, Tarasenko just won the Cup, Jared. Yeah, I meant like as an important player on his team. Tarasenko's like the 8th most important forward in Florida. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when he was a driver of the team. Because right now, they are looking at Stamkos at 34 years old to be a driver. They are looking at Marchessault in his 30s to be a driver, not to be a third liner who chips in a goal every now and then. Like Patrick Kane with the Red Wings. He's there to chip in a couple of goals. He is not there to drive the team. And if he is, they're not going to win a lot. So I was playing around with the lines. Here's what I came up with. And again, it should be noted the Predators have supposedly re-signed Alexander Carrier. I was told yesterday that Alexander Carrier was re-signing with the Predators. And even though we were told last week by the Tennessean that he was not, apparently I was told yesterday he was. So add him back into the mix as well. So here's what I put the lines together, and I've got, Ian, you tell me if you think this is crazy.
Okay.
Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist.
You want to keep the top line together?
I do.
Okay.
Stamkos, Sissons, Marchessault. I thought about Tommy Novak, but I think Tommy Novak kind of sucks. So I'm going to go with Sissons, centering that line with Stamkos and Marchessault, just because Sissons is a veteran. And again, all I need Sissons to do on that line, win the draw and get the puck to the other 2 guys, and then let them score. Now, if you want to try Novak because he's more of an offensive forward, and this is clearly an offensive line, if you want to try Novak, you can. But I, personally, am going to go with Sissons to begin. Then I'm going to go with Jankowski, Novak, and Evangelista, that line that they had last year that seemed to work well. I kind of actually toyed with the idea of moving Evangelista up into one of the top 2 lines, but who am I dropping down if I do that? And then LaRue, McCarron, and Smith. And I know that Barry said that he's not going to commit to putting LaRue on the roster to start the year. He's not going to commit to it, but I think it's going to be either him or Svechkov or Tomasino or Parsonen. Young guy, put him there, and then McCarron and Cole Smith. Then on defense, Yossi and Carrier, Shea and Stastny, and Lazan and Luke Shin. And I am breaking up Lazan and Carrier simply because I don't want to put Dante Fabro on my top pair, which he would then be the odd man out. And as far as the cap is concerned, I do think the Predators are going to have to make some moves here, and it would not surprise me to see them move on from Fabro or move on even from Novak as guys that, don't carry large cap hits, but do carry cap hits. And it's like, well, let's just go ahead and get rid of Fabro because we're paying Brady Shea and Carrier now, and we don't really have space for him. And if somebody gets hurt, we'll call up Willsby from Milwaukee and we'll put him in there. Saros is going to be the goalie. And then Wedgwood, who they got on a 2-year deal from Dallas, Wedgwood's going to be the backup. But I think as far as the games that UC Saros does not play, I think he'll split half those with Askarov. So what's going to happen is, say Saros plays on Tuesday night and Thursday night, and then they play Saturday night, I could see Askarov come up to play Saturday night and then go back down. But if it's a situation where, say, Milwaukee is, over here on this side of the country and the Predators are out in Vancouver and Seattle, then go ahead and put Wedgwood in there. Or if they feel like they need to get him a game, go ahead and put him in there. And then if something happens to Saros, Wedgwood can go in the middle of a game. And if something happens to Saros long-term, like a longer-term injury for the season, then Askarov comes up and Wedgwood's still backing him up. I mean, I think he's making I'd be shocked if he's making any money. Now, again, I go through those lines. Ian, do you have any problem with those lines that I just put out there?
I don't know if I think I would probably switch Novak to the second line at first. I mean, Sisson's there. You know what Sissons is. He's not a distributor of the puck. At least Novak can pass. And you got some guys who can finish on that line with him. I would start Novak and adjust from there. But
okay, so I understand the argument. I do. And I do think they're going to start that way. We'll have Andrew Brunette on at 5 o'clock. I'm going to ask him about that. I think they'll start that way. I think they want Novak to be a second line center who, to your point, can play on an offensive line. But what you said about Sissons and knowing what you have in Sissons, that's what makes me want to put Sissons on the second line, because it's almost like, I know Stamkos can finish and score. I know Marchessault can finish and score. I know Marchessault can play in his own end. I don't want to just be stuck with putting that line out there in only offensive situations, especially on the road. Like, I'd like to be able to trust that I can put them out there and basically have 2 top lines. And I trust Sissons where I don't trust Tommy Novak at all. That would be my one caveat to that. But that's what I think it's going to be. And I get excited doing that. But then I go back to, can that group, can that pairing, that's your team. There is not cap space for the Predators to go out and make a move that, a subsequent move, that a trade for a Martin Necas or something. Those are gone. Let's say Mitch Marner were to say, I don't want to stay in Toronto, or Toronto were to say, Mitch Marner, we don't want you to be here. Those moves, that's over. It's done. You do not have the space to be able to do that. This is your team. Can that win the Cup? Now in 2020, 2021, 2019, hell yes, this group could win the Cup. Forsberg, Josi, Saros, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Sissons. That group in 2019 could win a Stanley Cup. Hands down. 2020, hands down. I don't know if they can do it in 2025, which is the real question here. That's the real gamble. But the one thing I will say is this. I think you would win the Vancouver series with that line. I think you would win the Vancouver series because those are tried and true playoff players. And the reason you lost the Vancouver series is because you could not score at home in Game 3. You could not close out Game 4. You could not score at home in Game 6. That's why you lost. And I have to imagine that if on the second power play unit, instead of throwing out Jason Zucker or Anthony Beauvillier or whomever, you're throwing out Jonathan Marchessault, I feel pretty good about your chances. Now, I do wonder what the power play units are going to look like. I mean, I guess it's 4 forwards, right? O'Reilly, Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, and Josi on that first unit, or do you spread it out a little bit?
I would consider putting Marchessault on the second unit, in the same spot as Stamkos on that one-timer from that circle.
Mhm.
And then you each have somebody who's a right shot who's good at that position right there in the circle, and you can feed them the one-timer. So you'll have Stamkos on the peeper 1, and then you can have Marchessault on the peeper 2. You can rock that, and then this way you kind of have that position filled out for both.
So Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Stamkos, and Yossi on the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then Novak,
Evangelista,
Marchessault, Shea, and I would guess Carrier on the second. Stastny?
yeah, that's a good question. You could do Sissons.
You go with 4 forwards on both units?
I would consider it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would consider it. Or you could swap Evangelista and Nyquist if you want to even it out a little bit more for 1 and 2.
I am, again, looking at this, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm like, if you want to go 4 forwards on both, that's fine, because I don't see a defenseman that I'm like, oh, no, he has to get on the ice. I don't see one of those. Although Tyson Berry's still out there. Maybe they resign him and then put him out. I'm kidding. 615-737-1025. Phones and messages and whatever. However, we'll get to that coming up. 615-737-1025. Now, there are 2 concerns that come from today. Really, I guess I would say 3, as far as let's keep it real. And so there are 3 kind of little nuggets to keep real on this before just getting excited of, oh, yes, Steven Stamkos. Because I already had that moment in my life when I got, oh, yes, Wayne Simmons. I remember that. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, again, that's 615-737-1025 here on our program. And let me tell all the fine folks that you can join us Thursday on July 4th for the 18th annual Music City Hot Chicken Festival at East Park. It's a spectacular day packed with live music, contests, and, of course, hot chicken. It's free, so bring the whole family and discover more at hotchickenfestival.com.
You mentioned how this is a tough business and it can be a ruthless business, but so is there hard feelings towards the organization in Vegas because of everything you did and accomplished there, that there wasn't a better offer?
Yeah, obviously it's disappointing, but like I turned the page probably like an hour ago, so yeah, maybe an hour ago I turned the page and I was like, well, this is it, we move on and a new chapter, new challenge for me and my family, and we're excited. So, but yes, at the end of the day, I'll always look back at some of the best time in my life over there. And I mean, I'm pretty satisfied and happy of what we accomplished as an organization. And I did think I was a big part of it, and but they probably thought otherwise for the future. So that's what's disappointing in that story.
I do love how Jonathan Marchessault was like, I do think I was a big part of that over there. You think? You think you were a big part of that over there? I mean, like you were the Conn Smythe when they won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, I think you were a big part of there. You were part of two teams that made it to the Stanley Cup final. Yes, I do believe that you were a big part of what the Vegas Golden Knights did. So as excited as I am, and I am excited for the Predators. I mean, I'm excited at the fact that Barry Trotz, who came into this job and said, I'm taking big swings. I'm taking them. I'm taking risks. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I'm taking the swings. I am excited for the fact that he is putting his money where his mouth is and is literally taking the swings. I saw that the kid the Predators drafted with the 22nd pick on Friday night was ranked by The Athletic as the 42nd best player in the draft. And they said, well, the Preds maybe reached a little bit on the 17-year-old Russian kid, but maybe he becomes, with his physical play and he grows into his body and maybe he becomes something. And I'm like, I'm not going to be mad at the Predators for that. Barry said, I have told the scouts, I want to take big risks. And that's what they're doing. Now, when it comes to this, obviously it's a different kind of risk. It's a different level of risk, but there is some risk. So as excited as I am with the fact that they just added a 40-goal scorer, they added a former Conn Smythe, they added a legitimate top pair defenseman, all within 20 minutes today, I do have three concerns about it. Number one is the age. By the time these contracts are over, Jonathan Marchessault will be 38 years old. Steven Stamkos will be 37 years old. Brady Shea will be 37 years old. Roman Josi on his contract will be 38 years old. UC Saros will be 37 years old. And Philip Forsberg will be 35 years old. That's a lot of guys getting near 40. And while the cap's going to go up, and the hope is that these young guys that they've drafted and are in the system now will be up and ready to help the new guys, I am concerned about the idea of a bunch of old pawpaws out there on the ice in about 4 years, which could be a reality. The second, I think, issue that I have here is 3 years from now. So this is after O'Reilly's contract is over. But when you start the 2027-2028 season, Stamkos will be 37, Josi will be 36, Marchessault will be 36, Shea will be 33, Forsberg will be 32, and Saros will be 31. At that point, all those guys will be past their peak. Now, they won't all be past their prime, but they will, in fact, be past their peak. So that's one thing that I do have a concern with. Now, I am noting as far as the cap's concerned, which we'll get to the cap implications, that there will be a lot of guys that aren't on the team that are on it now. The second thing that makes me nervous about these signings, Tampa Bay did not want Steven Stamkos. That makes me nervous. Jonathan Marchessault was not wanted back in Vegas. You heard that cut right there where he said, yeah, I mean, it stung for a little bit. I've turned the page an hour ago and I'm excited about Nashville, but yeah, I think I did a lot of good things in Vegas. And I mean, I guess now in the case of Marchessault, Vegas, because they screw with the cap as much as possible, I mean, I really don't think they had the money to be able to repay him. I think they probably would have liked to, but again, I just don't think they had the money because that's what happens when you go get Noah Hanifin and you go get Jack Eichel and you go get Mark Stone and give him a massive contract and everybody on their team has a no move. So that might have been a cap crunch. With Marchessault, Tampa did not want Stamkos back. There was talk last week about Tampa wants Stamkos back, but Stamkos's people said
he's going to the market. And then Pierre put out there the idea that they were maybe going to try to offer Stamkos a long-term deal with a small AAV so he can get the money. And I think the number Pierre put up there was $3 million a year. And I'm like, you cannot go to a guy making $11 million who's your captain and say, we'd like to pay you $3 million a year. So when they made the trade of Sergachev early Saturday morning, I thought, okay, Tampa said, we can't afford Stamkos. We can't afford Stamkos. And then it comes down to the 11th hour. And now it's like, okay, fine, we'll get rid of Sergachev, which somebody help me understand that one. How they're going with Jake Gensel and Ryan McDonough over Steven Stamkos and Sergachev, who I think Sergachev might be the best player of the four right now. Somebody help me explain that. I know he's got some injuries, but still, I think he's 26 years old and a top pair defenseman, and I think he's a pretty good player. But again, I thought that was their move to, okay, fine, we'll bring Stamkos back. And then as soon as they made it, it was like, no, they're going for Jake Gensel. And so there is a part of me that's like, hey, Tampa Bay looked at Steven Stamkos and said, we love you, but we're not going to pay you. And originally it was, we love you, but we're not going to pay you because of the cap. Then they traded Sergachev and they signed Jake Gensel, and it was, we love you, but we're not going to pay you because we don't want to pay you because we'd rather pay Jake Gensel, and I am not a huge Jake Gensel fan. Which, by the way, I was shocked too. Gensel went to Carolina, said he wanted an 8-year contract at $8 million per, and Carolina was willing to give it to him, and then he said, no, I don't want that. And he went to Tampa, which, again, free agent, you were in the right and do whatever you want. I was surprised by that. But so that's the second thing that kind of, again, I have a little concern with. And then the third is, I always felt the hunt for the big boy forward would end when some guy on one of these teams doesn't want to be taxed at 52% in Canada, doesn't want to have 5 years of fixed interest rates. They want to live in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's warm. They want to live in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's nice, where there's no state income tax, where they've got an offensive coach, where they've got a team that's on the cusp of competing for a cup. I figured that there would be a Matthew Tkachuk-like moment. And if that Matthew Tkachuk moment comes, if there is, in fact, somebody out there who puts their hand up and says, what if it's Tkachuk's brother, and says, I want to trade out of Calgary, or I guess in this case, he's with Ottawa. I want to trade out of Ottawa. You can't get that guy. If Leon Draisaitl calls the Edmonton Oilers today and he says, I don't want to be an Edmonton Oiler anymore, you can't get that guy because you don't have the cap space in order to do it. And so, again, I'm sitting here saying, did you need to leave space to make a move that we don't know is going to be available in the future or not? But that is, again, one of the concerns that I have with the signings. And I do think that the Brady Shea deal is too long. Again, you got to give 7-year deals in order to get players. I get it. But I do think that deal's too long. I'd rather pay Trouba 8 for 2 years than commit to Shea for 7. But I have talked to some people today that told me they think that Brady Shea will age well into that contract. So make of that what you will. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. One texter says, or I guess this is the YouTube chat, Pred signed 2 40-goal scorers and a top 4 defenseman. Let's ride. Yes. But again, it's funny. One of my friends is a huge Tampa Bay Lightning fan. She has worked in football, but is a huge Lightning fan. And she told me, she was like, I wouldn't have given Stamkos $5 million. I said, you would have given Stamkos $5 million. And she said, I think he's more of a product of the guys around him. Guys like Braden Point, guys like Nikita Kucherov, guys like Cirelli. I said, really? You don't think Stamkos is kind of probably a part of the success of Braden Point? She said no. So that's kind of one of these, how confident are we that is going to be the case? Because Tampa Bay is telling us. Now, again, I don't know what they're thinking in Tampa Bay, But Tampa Bay is telling us they don't think Stamkos has anything left. It's at least worth noting. Benjamin says Jared wanted them to get most of these guys on Friday, so when it doesn't work out, we can blame him, just like he usually tries to blame the fans. You know what? You're right. I told you guys, no on Julio Jones. I told you guys, no on Jadeveon Clowney. And you guys said, you guys went crazy. And you guys said, oh, no, Jared, it'll be great. You watch. And it didn't. And I said on Friday, go get Steven Stamkos. But I also think Steven Stamkos is going to, play in all the games. I do think when they get into the playoffs next year and they need Stamkos on the ice, I think Stamkos is going to be on the ice. You can't say that about Julio and Jadeveon Clowney and those swings that the Titans took over the years that you guys got mad at me about when I said don't do it. I mean, I told you, I think they're going to sign Brady Shea. But what did I say last week? And Adam Vingan crapped on it. And then Adam Vingan came back and said, no, Jared might have had a point there. What I said was, I'd rather trade for a defenseman like Trouba, who New York's trying to get rid of at $8 million per, and they might retain some salary on. I saw they retained some salary. I think they retained salary on a Riley Smith trade, I believe, today to Pittsburgh. I don't think it was the other way around. Or was it the other way around, Ian?
I'm not totally sure. I just saw it, but I didn't see all the
Riley
details.
Smith went to Pittsburgh
Correct.
from the Rangers. Right. Okay. Yeah. So they retained some salary on Riley Smith today. I wonder if the Rangers would have retained some salary on a Trouba deal, and then you're only paying Trouba for 2 years, and you're not paying, again, you're paying Brady Shea for 7 that I'm not sure I'm in love with, but you can get mad if you want to get mad. I mean, this is a big risk here for Barry Trotz.
The Rangers acquired Riley Smith from
they
Pittsburgh.
did?
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh retained the salary. Because the Rangers don't have any room to move, because that's why they're trying to get rid of Trouba. And so I'm like, could you have made a move for that and do it for 2 years? So it's not like I sat here and said, you have to go get Brady Shea. You have to go. I do think the Stamkos contract is appropriate. I thought 8.25, they signed him for 8. I thought 4 years, they signed him for 4. I think that's an appropriate contract. And again, that's like my friend in Tampa when I was talking to her about it today. And she's like, I think Stamkos has lost a step. I still think and I said, I understand that. But they're not paying him $11 million, which is what he was making. They're not paying him to be Nathan McKinnon. They're paying him $8 million, which is what they're basically paying Forsberg. 40 goals. Be a weapon on the power play. That's what they're paying him for, and I think he can do that. 615-737-1025. More of your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Barry Trotz will talk at 4 o'clock today, and Andrew Brunette will join the program at 5 o'clock today. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They are proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, and I can only assume that they are very, very excited today at Hiller. Hiller actually is celebrating their 34th year of business. That is wild to me that Hiller is basically as old as I am. And that's a great thing. They're bringing the celebration to you with the birthday bash this month until July 31st. Enjoy a free smart thermostat with select new HVAC systems, free water tests, free leak detection and shut-off valves with tankless water heaters, and buy 10 and get 2 free landscape lights. Celebrate Hiller's birthday bash today by visiting happyhiller.com for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today.
What's going on with these coasters in front of you? How are you working these coasters with the team logos?
Can we get our top-down view here? We're actually
we
ranking all the fan bases, but purely based on vibes in terms of like how they're just feeling about their off season right now. So, I mean, as you can probably tell, we've got the Predators at the top right here because
They're feeling good.
they
Vibes
have
are high.
had
They're
a
buzzing.
big day. So we're then going all the way down to the worst, where Jesse's own Winnipeg
He's,
Jets.
yeah, he's not feeling great.
Having a tough time. First, the guy gets stuck in
know.
Iceland, and now his team's at the bottom of the scale.
Ian, what did happen to the Winnipeg Jets today?
I'm not sure.
I mean, that was TSN, and they're sitting there saying, yo, we are just ranking the teams by the vibes, and the number one vibes, the Predators right here, number one. And I'm like, okay, I get it. It's a very exciting time around here. Don't know if that means you'll win the cup or not, but it's exciting. And then it's like, oh, and all the way down here is the Jets. What'd the Jets do? You know, the
Not
Jets
attracting free agents, I guess.
well, the Jets had that one kid. Didn't they draft him in the first round? He don't want to play there?
Yeah, Rutger something, McGroarty or something like that.
Hey,
Some first round pick.
I'm just saying right now,
Disgruntled.
I don't know if he's any good or not. That would be a question for some guy named Pierre. But Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Stamkos, Novak or Sissons, Marchessault, Jankowski, Novak or Sissons, Evangelista, McCarron and Smith kind of got that fourth spot open. You know, I've penciled in LaRue, but it could be Parsonen, it could be Svechkov, it could be whoever, Scarbini. But, you know, hey, maybe a little trade, get that guy from Winnipeg who doesn't want to play in the minors and Winnipeg's, but then Barry probably doesn't like that. So a lot of you've weighed in on my lines, and a lot of people are arguing about who should be the second line center. So one person says on the YouTube chat, Novak will get the first look at the second line center, but what are the chances that Cody Glass or Juuso Parsonen unlock their potential? So I think the chances on Cody Glass are zero. Like, if I had to tell you what I think about young players on the Predators, so the non-established NHL guys, I have the high-end prospect category, and I have kind of the we'll see category, and then we'll have the I'm done giving you chances category. So the high-end prospect category, Askarov, Matthew Wood, who I believe is transferring from UConn to Minnesota, maybe. He's still in college. Molendyke, who they took in the first round last year. He's in that. And Kemmel, who's at Milwaukee. And I don't really know anything about the guy, but I'm going to throw that Russian kid that they took the other night. I'm going to throw him in there too. So that would be 5 guys that I would say are, you know, at least kind of part of the equation. Then there's kind of that middle tier of guys with, you know, Willsby and Delgado on defense and Svechkov and LaRue. And like those guys could provide an impact this year, and they might be good, solid young players. I don't know. And then there's Tomasino and Glass, who honestly I'm done with. You know, I think they're done with both of those guys. I heard today Willie compared Philip Tomasino to a Toyota Corolla. Did you hear that, Ian?
No, I did not.
So I heard Adam from Portland call in and called out Willie for comparing Tomasino to a Toyota Corolla. And Willie was trying to back his take, saying, no, I was just saying that Beauvillier and Zucker had more miles on them than, say, Tomasino. I think they're done with Tomasino. I don't think that Andrew Brunette is a Tomasino fan, and I think they're definitely done with Cody Glass. And honestly, I'm kind of glad, because I'm done with Cody Glass. You know, you can only have been a first-round pick in the 2017 draft for so long before you actually need to do something about it. And Cody Glass, outside of that one hat trick he had last year, really hadn't done anything about it. One texter says you can get on Tampa Bay with their Stamkos opinion, and I think it is undoubted. Like, there is no discussion. They did not want Stamkos back, which does concern me a little bit.
Not at that money.
Well, I mean, they gave the money to Gensel, though. Like, Gensel's not that good. If you
He's
ask
younger,
me today,
but yeah.
who would you rather have on the Predators right now on a 4-year deal? And I guess what? Gensel's in a 7-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
But who would you rather have on the Predators for the next 4 years? Stamkos or Gensel?
Probably Stamkos.
That's what I think. But they are like, no, not interested. And it's like, that's peculiar. One person in the YouTube chat says Tampa Bay thought Tanner Jeannot was worth a king's ransom last year. Boy, I could not believe that. When they made that trade for Tanner Jeannot, I could not believe it. Well, it all started because Tanner Jeannot went to the Predators and said he wanted Tom Wilson money, and he is nowhere near Tom Wilson. And so the Predators were like, yeah, we're not, I mean, that's ridiculous. So we'll ship you off. And they got that huge offer from Tampa, and they did it. And obviously Jeannot kind of stinks, which was part of the reason why I wasn't in love with the idea of keeping him, even if it meant giving him less than Tom Wilson money. But that obviously blew up in their face. And then they brought back McDonough. And I thought that a big part of the reason why they brought back McDonough was because they were trying to convince Stamkos to stay. But it ends up basically being a swap for Julien Brisebois, the general manager in Tampa Bay. It ends up being a swap of Stamkos, Sergachev, and Jeannot for Gensel and McDonough. And I personally think that's bad business. The one thing I will say, though, is they have their hands on Stamkos. We don't. Like, I don't watch Stamkos play every day. So, like my friend in Tampa told me, she was like, I wouldn't even give him $5 million. But he scored 40 goals last year. And outside of Hyman in Edmonton and maybe Mikko Rantanen, I don't know of a single player in the NHL who is capable of scoring 40 goals just because of the guys around him. Hyman and Rantanen are a little different because those guys play with all-time generational greats. But, I mean, Stamkos still scored 40 goals last year. But again, we're not around him every day. So we don't know, like, does he still have the juice? And Tampa clearly is convinced that he does not. So even though they blew the Jeannot deal, I would have told you, if I was friends with Julien Brisebois, the general manager in Tampa, and he called me and he said, hey, what is it that Crispy used to call me? You know how hockey people
Stiller.
Stiller. Hey, Stiller. I was wondering what you think of Tanner Jeannot. I'd be like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. He's a little bit better than a replacement level player. Do not do it. Go down to the minor leagues and at the AHL. You got somebody who can do what Tanner Jeannot does for the Predators. I promise you that. Do not trade all those picks. Because I was around Tanner Jeannot. Like, I watched him every game. And it sounds like they're telling us, like, no on Steven Stamkos. But again, he's Steven Stamkos. The other thing I can't get over is also the fact that I do think that you have the best power play coach in the NHL, and you are giving him a weapon on that power play, and the power play is probably why you lost your playoff series this year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back to more of your messages. 615-737-1025 here on our program. Boy, a lot of people today on Twitter, they were like, oh, you can get excited about the Predators, but you won't get excited about the Titans and free agency. And I think there is a massive difference between the two. Because the Titans spin in free agency as well. I want to get to that difference, and we'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Again, the Predators today. They've re-signed UC Saros. They've re-signed Alexander Carrier. They have signed Steven Stamkos to a 4-year, $8.25 million contract. They have signed Jonathan Marchessault to a 5-year, Ian, what is it, 5.25 for Marchessault?
5.5.
5.5, 5 by 5.5 for Marchessault.
Yep.
And then 7 by
7.
7 by 7 for Shea.
Yep.
Oof, that's a lot of money for Brady
That's a lot.
Shea.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money for Brady Shea. But they have made the additions. We continue. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. The Sounds today are taking on the Memphis Redbirds with the first pitch at 7:05 on 94.9 The Fan. On 94.9 The Fan, Sounds Baseball is presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Caldwell Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. You heard Ian's update. The Predators are loading up. They are spending the money. Stamkos, Shea, Marchessault, Carrier, Saros, Wedgwood. They are loading up in free agency this year. They had all that cap space. Last year, we wondered at the trade deadline, they're going to use all this cap space to take on a bad contract to get future assets. And Barry said, nah, didn't want to use it there. Didn't feel like He came on the show last Monday, and to his credit, I said, it sounds like you guys are in the mix for a lot of these big names. Would you say there's any accuracy to that? And he said, yeah, I'd say that's true. And on day one of free agency, they've been making a bunch of splashes. Now, I interpret the moves they made today as their way of saying that with a core of Yossi, Forsberg, Saros, O'Reilly, Shea, Stamkos, Marchessault, and Evangelista, we think we can win a cup. Now, that's not me saying that I think they can win a cup. That's them saying, we think this might be good enough to win a cup. So today, when I talked about when all the news started dropping and I tweeted out, who can't wait for the season to start? Who can't wait for 2 o'clock today? People started tweeting and saying, oh, the Titans spend in free agency and you rip that apart, but the Predators spend in free agency and you're just all gaga about that. But I think there's one massive difference between the two. First off, I don't think I'm completely gaga about it. I mean, I am aware of the fact that Steven Stamkos is going to be 34 years old. I understand you're not signing the 2017 version of Steven Stamkos because you undershot it by about $4 million, if that's the case. But there is a massive difference between the two. And the difference is when it comes to the Predators, they say they're going to do something with Barry Trotz running the team. They say they're going to do something, and then they go do it. Barry Trotz came on the show, and he told us multiple times he's keeping Saros. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm not sure I like the idea of signing Saros for another 9 years on his contract. But they've said, no, our plan is he's the goalie. They're going to give him trade protection on the front end. It's going to be less liberal. It's going to be more liberal on the back end so that they can make a move. It's going to be less handcuffing. And they're going to try to develop Askarov and maybe turn it over to him one day or try to trade Askarov. But they tell you that. We looked at the Predators and we said, what's the problem with the Predators? They need more scoring. They went out, they go get Stamkos and Marchessault. We said, well, they need another top pair defenseman. They go out and they sign Brady Shea. The Titans spent $8 million on a running back. There was an unnamed executive in The Athletic that said, hey, look at Carolina. And again, we're talking about Carolina. And then not the Hurricanes. That's a well-run organization. We're talking about the Panthers. And you're saying, look at Carolina. This is what an unnamed executive told The Athletic. Look at Carolina. That's a plan. They spent all their money up front. They said, okay, we're going to do this. The Titans, they just signing 29-year-old receivers and $8 million running backs and just, I think they said bad business is what they said. Now, I'm not saying it's bad business. But I think what the Titans did was the Titans went into free agency and they just threw a bunch of money in the air. They had a plan, and when the plan didn't work out, they turned around and said, okay, well, we'll just sign Calvin Ridley. And I know that because they've said that's what happened. Well, we didn't think we were going to sign Calvin Ridley, and then we missed on other guys, so we just decided to sign Calvin Ridley. And with the Titans, no matter how many guys they sign, I don't think we can look at this team today and say, yeah, that team's good. That team is a competitor. That team is going to make the playoffs. I can look at the Predators today and tell you this team is a competitor in the Western Conference. They have the goaltending to compete. They have the defense to compete. And clearly, they upgraded their biggest weakness, which was the fact that they didn't have a second scoring line last year. It was all Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. Now, I don't love doing this. I don't love just comparing hockey and football because it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison. But the Titans still don't have a right tackle. I don't know how many times I have to talk about this for you guys to understand that it was a big deal last year and it was a big deal the year before that. And it'll be fine. But they don't have a right tackle. With the Predators, it's like, okay, is Fabro better to put on the first pair with Yossi than Carrier? And then you leave Carrier with Lazan but they're all NHL caliber defensemen. We're talking about right now, looking at the lineup. Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist are going to be on the team. Stamkos, Novak, and Marchessault are all going to be on the team. Jankowski, Sissons, Evangelista, McCarron, and Smith all going to be on the team. That leaves one spot that's open for about 9 guys. Like, there's a difference there. When I look at what the Predators are doing right now, and again, I don't think the Predators have guaranteed themselves anything. And Stamkos is older. And Marchessault is older. And Brady Shea's 30. I don't think they've guaranteed themselves a cup or anything like that. I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. I just think that the Predators would have won the Vancouver series with the team that they have today. That's the only difference. If you beat Vancouver, you play Edmonton. I don't know if the Predators would have beat Edmonton. I would lean towards probably not. But when I look at what the Predators are doing today, it actually makes me think a lot of what the Texans did this offseason. And I think the Texans absolutely built a Super Bowl contender this offseason. They feel good about their quarterback. They kept their tight end, who's a solid player. They went out and added Stephon Diggs, and Stephon Diggs does, like Stamkos, have some baggage, right? In the case of Stamkos, it's that he's going to be 34 years old, and Tampa Bay thinks he's declined, and I think he was something like minus 21 last year when he's been a plus player his entire career. There's the decline you worry about. With Diggs, there's the crazy that you have to worry about. But, again, Diggs can still go out there and get you 1,300 yards, and Stamkos scored 40 goals last year. Then there's the signings of Danico Autry and Aziz Al-Shaair. And it's like, yeah, they looked at their team and they said, you know what? We need more on the defense. Let's go get Danico Autry. The Texans are building to compete today, knowing that when these deals are up, when their Danico Autry contract's up, their Stephon Diggs contract's up, they'll try to have a young guy move into that spot. The Titans, to me, they just threw a bunch of money out there and they're going to hope the quarterback works out. And I hope it works out for them. I do. But when you sit there and you say, oh, well, we can't get excited about the Titans and the spending of the money they have, but you're excited about the Predators. But no, I see a plan when it comes to the Predators. When the Titans signed Lloyd Cushenberry, I said, I get that. They probably overpaid for what is a mid-center in the NFL. But if you want to get a starting caliber center that checks all the boxes, you're going to have to overpay. They did. Fine. Same with the corners. Got it. Now I'm worried about the one corner's knees because the guy never plays, or at least never practices, and the playing going forward is what was concerned to everybody else. But I mean, I still don't know who's going to rush the passer this year for the Titans. The Nico's 9.5 sacks walked out the door, and you replaced him with a guy who's made it through one practice.
Just seems like the Titans made a lot of win now signings when they're not as positioned to win now as the Preds are.
Don't you feel like with the roster they have today, they would have beaten Vancouver?
Well, I think they would have had they were pretty close to beating Vancouver as it was. So sure, that's definitely a better chance. You definitely have more scoring options, especially on the power play.
And not only that, the Predators' replacements, like the guys that they've lost, McDonough was a solid player. Now, I think McDonough is probably a little bit more on reputation than he was total game. Now, I know they loved him. The Predators did. But that's really all they lost. Zucker, Beauvillier, Tyson Berry, whatever. The Titans lost to Nico Autry and Derrick Henry. Those are really, really important pieces. To me, it's a world of difference. Let's get to your phones next. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, we'll get to your phones and your YouTube chats as we are basically what happened with our text line, which is down. Our text line company is no longer in business as of July 1, and our new text line company has to take 3 business days in order to start after the old text line company. I don't totally understand it. It's a text line company thing, but it is what it is. So we'll read your YouTube chat things and we'll get to your phones as promised next. 615-737-1025. Plus, Stamkos asked about his roller coaster of emotions with Tampa and Nashville. What he said, we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Oh, let's talk Twice Daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily. They are the best. And I absolutely could not tell you how much I go there and how much I love going there. And if you ever wondered why Twice Daily is named Twice Daily, quite frankly, I think they may have named it after me, because there's one in my neighborhood in Green Hills, and I go in there in the morning and I go back in the afternoon, and they've got the made-to-order kiosk, and I love to hit it up. Whether it's a wrap, whether it's the wings, a pizza, the tenders, whatever. They got it right there at the made-to-order kiosk, or I can just put it in my app, get in the car, head on over to Twice Daily, and it's already made. Same with breakfast. They got tons of great things. Those snacks are the real thing. They're made to order. And you can get a huge warm pretzel and dip, 3-piece chicken tender snack, spicy boneless chicken wings, and much more. And, of course, Twice Daily has all of your favorite convenience options as well. And you use the app, you get rewarded. It's great. I can order in store or on the Twice Daily app, all fresh and tasty, priced just right for your budget. That is Twice Daily.
Describe the emotions of the last couple of days, and particularly last few hours before you came to this decision, Stephen.
Well, it's been probably as crazy as you can think in terms of just a roller coaster of emotions. Clearly, so much amazing history in Tampa for my family and I, and you know, ultimately trying to work something out there, and you know, fell short, not by my trying, that's for sure. But once we kind of got past that, you know, we were really open to the opportunity of going somewhere else. And every time we were looking for things that would certainly interest us in the new team, Nashville kept popping up. And so thankful that they had mutual interest and we were able to get something done. And listen, as crazy as it's been the last couple of days and the lack of sleep and the nerves and just that uneasy feeling, once we made that call to bury Trotz and the Nashville Predators that we were coming, that feeling went away, and it's just been pure excitement.
Steven Stamkos on TSN earlier today. I got to tell you, I don't want to knock TSN's coverage, but I was watching TSN today, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they went from Kevin Weeks talking about free agency to the women's hockey draft. No disrespect to women's hockey, but I'm not interested in talking about the women's hockey draft today. I'm like, get back to free agency. So then I went to NHL Network. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Owen has been waiting patiently and is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Owen?
Hey, I just want to know now, after all those free agency signings today, what do you think the biggest weakness is for the Predators now? What holes do they have to fill, and who could we get to fill those? Thanks.
Yeah, I think the biggest hole right now is second line center. It's because I'm not sold on Tommy Novak. So the first line, the thing about lines, some coaches, it's like you got to get the coach to use a crowbar in order to, change up the lines. And then other coaches change up the lines every 25 minutes. And I actually think Andrew Brunette does a pretty good job of switching things up a little bit, but for the most part, wants to keep things somewhat similar. So there's no doubt in my mind that the Predators would probably prefer to go into camp with that first line that was so successful last year of Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist staying together, which makes me think that they're going to put Stamkos and Marchessault on the second line, though that second line may end up being the first line because both guys are capable of scoring 40 goals.
I do wonder the chances of them splitting up the top line.
Well, if they did that, that would be by what? Putting Marchessault on the front line with Forsberg and O'Reilly and then moving Nyquist down to Stamkos' line?
It would be or Stamkos on the first line and moving Nyquist down.
But aren't both Stamkos and Forsberg left wingers?
They are both. Yeah, I'm sure they would be able to figure that out. But I don't know. I just wonder if they would eventually consider breaking up the top line. That's all.
So, and I hear you. But I do think that they're going to go into camp. You're right. It could be a crit. That's what we'll ask Andrew Brunette at 5:00. What is his original thought process on this?
Sure.
But for me, I'm going to say that's your first line, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, which then says, okay, if Stamkos and Marchessault are on the second line, who's centering it? And Ian's probably right. I personally, if there was a game today, like a meaningful game, I would put Colton Sissons in the second line center position. Even though he's not much of an offensive player, he can win in the dot. I can trust him not to make a mistake. And if I tell him, hey, man, your job is to get the puck to those two guys, he can do it. Now, I don't think he's a skilled distributor, but he can get it done if he has to. And I trust that over what I saw out of Tommy Novak in the Vancouver series, which was a fish out of water, which was when the going gets tough, Tommy Novak is a spectator more than he is a participant. Now, I do think Ian's right. I think they're going to give Novak the first crack at it, and they're going to hope that the talent, because Tommy Novak's got some real offensive talent, their hope is that Novak is going to take that offensive talent and with the other guys kind of alleviating maybe some of the jam off of him, that he'll maybe come into his own, which would be great. But as of right now, I'm looking at the top six, and I feel good about Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Stamkos, and Marchessault, and I'm that sixth guy is kind of my biggest question. Defense, I'm not really all that worried about because Yossi is a top pair defenseman. Shea is a top pair defenseman, and I think they'll put Carrier back with Yossi. And so I think they'll be okay there. And then goaltending, obviously, with Saros. That's for me. On the YouTube chat, there's a lot of discussion. One person says, I've heard it all now. Jared says the Texans are Super Bowl contenders. And then the guy has the emoji with the hand in the face. I think the Texans are Super Bowl contenders. Ian, do you think the Texans are Super Bowl contenders?
Yeah, I think you have. I mean, probably not in the top tier, but I'd say that's second tier.
I mean, I think they're there with Cincinnati.
You think so, huh?
Yeah, I mean, what is different between, say, them and Buffalo? You know, Buffalo gets to the division round of the playoffs every year.
Well, Stroud's only in his second year.
That is true. Stroud could suck.
The other
like Vince
guys
Young,
are a little bit more proven at this point.
but I think I think Houston's legit. I mean, I certainly think the wide receiver position is much better at Houston than it is in Buffalo. Last year, this time of the year, everybody was telling us Jacksonville was going to be really, really good. And I was like, yeah, I don't see it. And now Houston is kind of in the position Jacksonville was in last year. And when it comes to Jacksonville, my argument is I absolutely see it. One person says Tampa Bay's GM, that's Julien Brisebois. Julien Brisebois is not nearly as good as Steve Yzerman. The guy has made a bunch of questionable moves. I did look that up when Brisebois got put in there. It does feel like, Ian, that they won with Yzerman's teams. And that
yeah, I guess so. You could say that.
The Jeannot move was a bad one, and I thought it was probably going to be bad at the time. And
even the Sergachev deal was he was good, but it's almost like they overpaid because of that run. Oh, the Alexander Carrier is officially done.
Do we know the money on Carrier?
3 years, 11.25 total.
So what is that, like less than 4 a year, like 3.75?
Yeah, 3 is what to 10. So yeah, something like that, 3 something.
Okay. I don't know if
3.75. It's under 4. So
and you said it's 3 years?
Correct.
I mean, if he plays on the top pair with Yossi, it's worth it. If he plays on the top pair with Yossi and Brady Shea, goes into that second pair and they basically split ice time and they put, Stasny with Brady Shea or something like that. But if Carrier ends up anchoring the third pair with Lazan, then I'm not a huge fan of that move. I'm not really a huge fan of that move.
The Carrier extension?
Yeah, I'm not really, I'm just not a fan. But is what it is. So apparently all of these signings are going to drop, and then Barry will take the podium around 4:00, and we will run that live. And then I do believe, and I'm not keeping up exactly with when these guys are going to talk, but when these guys do have their media availabilities,
Stamkos will be talking at 5:00 today.
Stamkos will be at 5
via Zoom.
Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll talk to Brunette at 5, and then we'll,
see what we can get of the Stamkos.
Right.
Yep.
Whatever Stamkos says, if he says anything crazy, I already heard his interview with TSN, in which he basically, Stamkos did that interview like a pro. There was actually, I actually do want to get to this though, because there is something from the Marchessault and Stamkos interviews on TSN that I actually do think is a big deal. And I do like it. Because they both know it. We'll get to that coming up next. And I do think that this is kind of something that it will motivate them forward, which I do want to get to. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
through all of this, like what happened? Like you're the captain, you're Mr. Tampa Bay. What happened?
Yeah, to be completely honest, Army, I found myself asking the same question. And the more people I talked to, everyone seemed to share that same sentiment, which is puzzling and strange. And at the end of the day, there was no question that I was willing to put all that stuff aside to remain a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like I said, my family and I absolutely love playing for that city and playing for the players that are there. It just seemed like maybe not everyone thought that way. And listen, I'm a big boy. I can handle that. We went about doing our business. I thought I played extremely well this year, regardless of the contract distraction, and just, told them at the beginning of the year that it wasn't going to affect my play. And that's something that I was proud of. So listen, we wanted it to end and retire as a Tampa Bay Lightning. It certainly didn't work out, but at the end of the day, in order to look yourself in the mirror, you have to just be honest with yourself, know your self-worth, know what loyalty and respect means to you, and move on. And that's why it's been so exciting for our family. Once we kind of got over that hump, we kind of zeroed in on a few teams, with Nashville being very high on that list, and just the mutual interest from day one, how aggressive they were, how accommodating they were in terms of any questions or concerns. And it just seemed like a natural fit. And we're so excited.
That was Steven Stamkos on Sportsnet. And it's funny because in that, he's asked, well, you're the captain in Tampa. I mean, what happened with Tampa? And it was like, I wanted a contract. They didn't offer me a contract. I said I wasn't going to let it affect my play. And then they ended up moving on. And I guess it is what it is, but I'm really excited about Nashville. So he said similar things to TSN when they asked him if he was bitter towards Tampa Bay. And just the beginning of this kind of tells you all you need to know. They asked him about the bitterness towards Tampa. Here's what he said.
You talked about the great memories you'll have, but will there be any tinge of bitterness that the organization didn't try harder to make it happen?
Well, listen, it's such an emotional time right now. I can't lie and say that, really since the beginning of last year when I didn't get an extension, that, you're a human, you have emotions and you want things to go your way, but that's just your perspective. Everyone else has a different perspective.
So right then and there, when he said, look, I can't lie. Yes, I'm bitter. I thought I was a great Tampa Bay Lightning. I think I'm good enough to still be on that team. I think that I'm the captain of that. I think that I'm the reason we won the 2 cups. I think that I'm the reason I scored 40 goals last year. And I thought I was a team player by not bitching too much about not getting an extension last year. Yeah, I don't like it. Jonathan Marchessault, the Conn Smythe winner when Vegas won the cup, an original Vegas Golden Knight. How did he feel about Vegas? Here's what he said.
You mentioned how this is a tough business and it can be a ruthless business. But so is there hard feelings towards the organization in Vegas because of everything you did and accomplished there, that there wasn't a better offer?
Yeah, obviously it's disappointing, but like I turned the page probably like an hour ago, so maybe an hour ago I turned the page and I was like, well, this is it, we move on and a new chapter, new challenge for me and my family, and we're excited. So, but yes, at the end of the day, I'll always look back at some of the best time in my life over there. And I mean, I'm pretty satisfied and happy of what we accomplished as an organization. And I did think I was a big part of it, and but they probably thought otherwise for the future. So that's what's disappointing in that story.
He's pissed. My favorite is, but I let that go an hour ago. That's not how life works. When somebody is grieving a relationship, a death, something, somebody will tell you, oh yeah, hey, just move on. Just let it go. Just let it go. That's not how life works. Both guys looked at their teams as kind of more than just a business. They looked at it like a family. And when they were told, we don't want you back, it hurt both guys. And I like it because that tells me that both guys are going to come in here and they are going to have a rocket up their tush because they are mad that they feel like they got disrespected by their teams that they won cups for. The thing that I've learned about Barry Trotz is that if you are not interested in being great, Barry Trotz does not have time for you, and he is not going to waste his time trying to get you to love the game. That's why he's not interested in Johansson and Duchesne, because he's not here to babysit you to try to get you to love playing hockey. So once you've got a reason, you come with your reason, and then they'll coach you up. And that's what he's done. He said, hey, I'll pay you the money. If you can come in here and you can be a professional and you can rub off on everybody else and you can put the puck in the net and you can win draws in your own zone and you can do the important things that it takes to win games, I'll pay you. But you got to meet me halfway. That's why he canceled the Vegas trip. I'm not here to be a chaperone for your vacations. We're here to win games. And so when it comes to picking the right guys in free agency, it has to be guys that are talented enough to get the job done. And it has to be guys that are motivated enough to get the job done. Once Ryan Johansson signed for that big contract, and I mean this with all due respect, hockey didn't matter to him. He told the coaching staff hockey wasn't his life. It just didn't matter enough to him. And some of us will say, well, hey, we all have lives outside of the game. Jared, you have a life outside of the radio station. You're right, I do. But I don't think anybody would ever say, hey, Jared doesn't bring it when he comes on the air every day, or it's not a priority to Jared of course you wouldn't say that. And that's when it comes to the Predators. I mean, Barry Trotz is not going to waste his time trying to get you motivated. But in the case of both guys, I mean, they've got rods up their rear end that they're on a mission to prove because they feel completely disrespected by their last team. And I love that. I freaking love it. Going back to your YouTube chat, honest to God, I missed the text. I am honestly starting to hate the YouTube chat. And I'll tell you why. Because the people are talking to each other on this. And so now it's all just complaining about, the other station. And I get that out of there. I don't care about that. I care about the actual sports stuff. But a lot of people do like the show, which I do appreciate you guys saying in here as far as that's concerned. Somebody in the YouTube chat goes, Jared, what do you think will happen with Askarov? I know you mentioned splitting time with Wedgwood, but losing a Russian teammate and signing Saros doesn't look great for Askarov. Who is the Russian teammate that they lost?
Igor Afanasyev.
Oh, who cares?
They were buddies.
So?
I'm just saying what the texter YouTuber, whatever is talking about.
Whatever. Okay, so here's the deal with Askarov, because I do think a lot of people are going to ask this. And I think Trotz is going to be asked this when he talks at 4 o'clock. I believe that everything that's been reported is true. I believe that when Barry Trotz told Alex Doherty at the Tennessean that he wasn't interested in trading the goalie, I do think that he was somewhat telling the truth. Then I think as soon as Saros got signed, everybody and their grandma in the NHL world looked at it and they said, well, this can't be serious. If you're going to sign Saros to a 9-year extension, which again, it's an 8-year extension, but we're talking about 9 years out, and there's only one goalie, surely the other young goalie is probably not a priority to them anymore. So let's pick up the phone and call. And so then Barry, told Pierre, Lebrun, because Pierre was the one that reported it, that the Predators were looking to get in the top 5 and were willing to deal Askarov in order to get into the top 5. And so Barry probably looked at it and said, okay, well, I do have a goalie signed, so let me just go ahead and see what I can get. And nobody was willing to move out of the top 5, so they weren't willing to make the move. And then I want to say it was Elliott. All of these guys are running together now between Elliott and Pierre and Chris Johnston and Drager. And I want to say it was Elliott reported that the Predators are fine with Askarov the way it is, but they are looking for either a prospect of the same caliber as Askarov, which means your top prospect. So if you are the Anaheim Ducks and you pick up the phone, the Predators aren't going to expect Leo Carlson or the kid they drafted 3rd overall. But the Predators are going to expect probably the next best prospect in exchange for Askarov or a ready-made NHL player, i.e. Martin Necas, in exchange for Askarov. And if they don't get that, and I don't think they will get that, when they don't get that, I do believe that the Predators will keep Askarov down at Milwaukee. They'll have Mitch Korn working with him, trying to get him better every day. They'll have Pekka talking to him. The same thing Pekka told us on the show, which was going to Milwaukee for the third year in a row was the worst feeling in the world. But looking back on it, I wish I could have a crystal ball because I saw how important that third year in Milwaukee was for my career. Well, if Pekka's going to tell us that, Pekka is sitting down with Askarov and he's telling him that, saying, hey, no, this is the best thing for you. And Mitch Korn, this is the best thing for you. And they're going to try to build him up and make him as good as possible. And then I do think if they don't get what they want in return, they're going to sit on the asset. And then eventually he'll back up Saros. And then maybe he goes back to Russia. I don't know. But I do think that you guys want an answer of what's going to happen with Askarov. They're going to trade him. Who are they going to trade him for? Here's who they're going to trade him for. But I don't think that they know that yet. Well, they're going to try to develop in the minor leagues. Develop in the minor leagues for what? I don't think they exactly know that yet.
The goalie market's not great. You got to maybe find a team who's not in a necessarily win now mode and hope that they're looking to kind of build their roster and build a young goalie along with some of their younger core.
What if San Jose says we want a long-term goalie to go around Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we'll do is we'll give you, and I don't even know who's on that team right now.
Yeah, I don't know really.
But we'll give you somebody good, or we'll give you a prospect that's a high-level prospect in San Jose's system, but is not Macklin Celebrini or Will Smith.
Not top 10 kind of guy.
Then I think that's kind of where the discussion comes in. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones. 615-737-1025, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, Barry Trotz at 4 o'clock. The Predators have made the Saros deal official. So that deal is now done. Technically, 8 years, 774. That's done. And then again, Barry Trotz will be available at 4 o'clock. We'll run that live. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
And Nashville not done yet. Signed Scott Wedgwood as a backup goaltender. So it's going to be UC Saros and Scott Wedgwood as the tandem there.
Which is not insignificant because, of course, Nashville was listening on Yaroslav Askarov all weekend long, and the prized first-round pick who had a great year with Milwaukee of the AHL. I spoke with Barry Trotz at the end of draft about Askarov's future, and they said they don't mind keeping him, having him continue to develop, but they will continue to listen on him as far as whether someone steps up in a trade.
There you go. That was TSN, the insiders, talking about the Scott Wedgwood deal. And so here's the deal on the Wedgwood thing. So Wedgwood will be the backup, but he won't be your traditional backup, as in the way that it worked this past year for the most part was Tuesday, Saros, Thursday, Saros, Saturday, Lankinen. And it kind of felt like it was an every other day kind of thing. So or every other week kind of thing. So it was probably like Saros, Lankinen was kind of how they did it. What I think it's going to be this year is I think it's going to be Tuesday, Saros, Thursday, Saros, Saturday road game, Askarov. And then he goes back down to Milwaukee. And then on Tuesday, it's Saros. And then on Thursday, it's Saros. And then the next Saturday, it's Wedgwood. And then when they have a back-to-back, I think you'll see sometimes where you'll see Wedgwood go behind Saros because it may be a Saturday, Sunday, and on Saturday, Askarov's getting a start at Milwaukee. But I think that unlike last year where it was Saros and Lankinen, I think it's going to be a lot more Saros and Wedgwood / Askarov than it is going to be Saros and Wedgwood. And that's just my opinion, though. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michigan is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Michigan.
Hey, Stilly. First time, long time. Love the coverage today. Gotta ask a question off the bat before I ask another one. Is this? I know the NHL doesn't move the needle like the NFL does. We can all agree to that. But is this like the most consequential day of Nashville sports? Maybe outside of like 2016 Game 6 and the 2000 Super Bowl? Like I can't think of another one. This has been a big deal today.
No, I think that's a humongous recency bias on your part. I mean, especially you said like Nashville sports. And I mean, like I feel like the trade the Titans made in order to get the picks that ended up being Jack Conklin and Derrick Henry and Corey Davis and like that trade with the Rams. Like I felt like that was probably a little bit more consequential. It kind of opened an entire Super Bowl window, which I think might be a little different. Michigan, thank you for your call. I mean, I don't even think when we talk about consequential, and I think that that's like a pretty, big statement, consequential. I think of consequential, and I think of both good and bad. So, like, I don't think that this, for instance, the Predators spending a bunch of money in free agency, I don't think that equates to the consequential nature of firing John Robinson. The guy was the general manager for 7 years, and you never had a losing record. And with you in first place with an 88% chance to win the division, the owner got a stick up her ass and fired the GM. Like that is, and think about what's happened since then, right? The franchise has gone in a totally different direction and the coach has been fired. And now it's not even the same team anymore. And now Derrick Henry's not here. And it's like, that is consequential. That was nuking your own program. Now, was it the right thing to do because maybe you needed to start from scratch? I don't know. But that, to me, was way more consequential than the Predators just going out and signing some free agents. And I'm not saying that I don't think this is big, because I do think this is big. I just think this is big right now, and there are big things that happen all the time. I would even argue that this isn't even the biggest in terms of fan excitement and fan, fan focus as far as July 1 is concerned. Build up to the Predators signing Matt Duchene, that when they signed him, it was like they had accomplished something. Now, Adam Vingan tried to warn everybody when he kept saying the stats say Duchene's not that good. Vingan tried to warn everybody. It didn't do anything for anybody, but I mean, I think that there was more of a, we got Duchesne, we're going for the cup, with it, nothing stopping us. I think there was more of that than there is today. I think the conversation's been pretty measured today, because even though I do believe, and we'll hear what Barry has to say when he gets up there and he talks about it in 10 minutes, but I do think that the message that I feel like I'm hearing from Barry Trotz is that Barry Trotz thinks that he's going to go contend for the Stanley Cup this year. But I don't feel, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't feel like the fan base is looking at this saying, on to the cup. I think that they're looking at it, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm projecting my own feelings onto this. But I think they're looking at it, and they're saying to themselves what I'm saying, which is, I think if you had these guys on the team last year, you would have won the Vancouver series. And if you won the Vancouver series, I don't know if you would have beaten Edmonton. I don't think even with Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea, I don't think you would have been favored to win that series, but I think you would have had a puncher's chance. And if you have a puncher's chance against Edmonton, who went to Game 7 of the Cup final and lost by an eyelash, then you probably have a puncher's chance against everybody. And that's how I feel about this. But when you ask me, is this like the most consequential, the biggest consequential moment or whatever it may be, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, this is not the same as a moment of making a draft pick between Vince Young and Matt Leinart or Jay Cutler or whatever. And then the other thing, too, is when it comes to the actual quote-unquote consequences, those things will be determined here in the near future when we see whether or not they win. And then does that lead to people getting fired, or does that? Now, I remember very vividly 5 years ago. It's actually funny caller brought this up because I thought about this before the show, and then I haven't thought about it until just now. But I was in New York City 5 years ago on July 1st, and the Predators signed Matt Duchesne. I was in Nashville on July 1st. I went to New York on July 2nd. And the Predators signed Matt Duchesne. And I remember I was doing the show at the ESPN New York studios, and the Rangers had signed the other big target in free agency, Artemi Panarin. Well, look at kind of the trajectory of the two teams based on that signing. Panarin is probably a top 6 forward in the game right now, and New York is competing for the cup. And Matt Duchesne just signed a second $3 million contract with the Dallas Stars. And it didn't work out, and everybody got fired. And I remember when I was doing the show in New York, and I was sitting there, and we were talking about, now is the pressure on Laviolette. Because even though Laviolette had just an unbelievable amount of success as the coach, it was like, well, now they went out and got Duchesne, and now the expectations are PK out, Duchesne in, And Laviolette barely made it through the new year. So let's not get too caught up in the moment. Let's not look at, again, this is a very, the Stamkos thing is a big signing. It is a big name. But you also paid $8 million for him. You didn't pay 13. This is, I don't want to say it's Ken Griffey Jr. on the Reds because I'm hoping it's not. But again, you're paying $8 million, at least as far as I'm concerned. One person says, Jared, does your guarantee now no longer count on Alexander Carrier? Boy, that guarantee, Ian, we have just followed the roller coaster of that.
Yeah, we're going to have to rescind the guarantee.
I mean, it's wrong. Alexander Carrier's on the team. Like, I was wrong on that one. And I guaranteed it because Chris Mason argued when I said I don't think Carrier is very good. Chris Mason got on here and we argued tooth and nail. And I said 2 years from now, he will not be on this team. And then Alex Doherty reported last week at the Tennessean that Alexander Carrier wasn't coming back. And I was like, aha! And then yesterday, I was told Carrier was coming back. I added it to my predictions on Twitter. I said, add Carrier re-signing with the Predators to my predictions when I felt strongly that Carrier would be returning. And I guess Carrier's back. I mean, I think Carrier is fine. I think you can do better. Like, I think there's a big difference to me. When I think of like what matters to me on defense, there's you can just go find somebody that can do that. And that's how I feel about Carrier. Whereas like Ekholm, I don't feel like, oh, you just go find somebody to do that. I do think that the signing of Brady Shea is the replacement for Ekholm. So now you get all the picks you got in the Ekholm deal, plus Reed Schaefer, plus now you've got the replacement in Brady Shea. Okay, Barry Trotz to the podium next. What he has got to say about all this, and I have no idea what it's going to be. And if we've learned anything about Barry, who came on the show last Monday, and he said they were in the mix on the big names. And he said they were going to be active in free agency. And he said they were going to re-sign Saros. If there's anything about Barry Trotz you need to know, it's that this guy is a straight shooter. So what he has to say, Robbie texted me and said people are asking him, are we going to run the Barry Trotz press conference? We will run that, and we will do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Barry Trotz set to talk with the media momentarily. When he does, we will have that. And again, it has been a lot of money spent between Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, and then re-upping with UC Saros and Alexander Carrier and adding Scott Wedgwood as the backup goalie. The Predators are making all those different moves. And I think, again, my takeaway, and I don't know what Barry's going to say when Barry gets to the podium. And Ian, when he does, just let me know in my ear and we will go right to Barry. But my big takeaway is Barry Trotz thinks this team can win the cup next year with a core of Forsberg, Josi, Saros, Shea, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, and then all the other guys. Everybody, it's a team sport, so everybody counts. But, guys like Colton Sissons are a part of the group, but they're not really kind of the core driving you to try to compete for a cup. My guess is he's thinking that group can win you the cup. I don't know if it can or it can't, but I'm certainly willing to watch to see them try to do it. And I wonder how Barry's going to approach that topic of competing for the cup, of a window, how he's going to approach that when on the other side of it, we've been talking about getting younger. We've been talking about building for the future, and we've seen the Predators invest in assets, whether it's the picks that they've acquired throughout the last couple of years by trading away Niederreiter and Jeannot and Ekholm and Granlund and the guys they've gotten rid of over the last couple of years, or the guys they've been talking about bringing up recently, whether it's Molendyk or Askarov, which what are they going to do about him, given the fact that Yossi's in there now, Saros is in there now signed, but Molendyk and Wood and Kemmel and LaRue and Svechkov and Schaefer and all the young guys they have down there, kind of what's the plan for having a team that you think can compete now and then somewhat transitioning to a team of younger guys when you said your goal is to get younger, and instead Steven Stamkos is 34 years old. The one thing that does concern me about this, and I do wonder what Barry's going to say, is that 3 years from now, Stamkos will be 37, Josi will be 36, Marchessault will be 36, Shea will be 33, Forsberg will be 32, and Saros will be 31. And while we would hope that like an Evangelista has kind of jumped up into the core group of guys, or Molendyk by then has jumped up into the core group of guys, we don't know that. And it's hard to bank on prospects, and you're still going to be paying $8 million to a guy who's 37, and $9 million to a guy who's 36, and $5.5 million to another guy who's 36. And you don't get better at sports when you're that old. In fact, being the leader of their team, so this is, taking away from Vladimir Tarasenko winning the cup as a role player for the Florida Panthers, because he's not one of the drivers of that team. Kachuk, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Bennett, Reinhart, those guys are more of the drivers than Tarasenko, who was just an added piece at the deadline. Taking away from that, Crosby won his last cup at 29. Ovechkin won his last cup at 32. Kane won his last cup at 27. Taves won his at 26. And when the St. Louis Blues won with Tarasenko, he was 28 years old. Steven Stamkos will be 34. And then what about the cap? Because the Predators for the last couple of years have had a ton of cap space. They've been able to maneuver here and there and, go ahead and sign this guy, or they could take on a bad contract, or they could retain half of Ryan Johansson's salary. But the good news is, again, looking 3 years from now when Stamkos will be 37 years old, at that point, Lauzon's contract will be off the books, Schen's contract will be off the books, Fabro's contract will be off the books, O'Reilly will be off the books, Novak, Nyquist, Sissons, Carrier, Johansson, Ekholm, and I believe at that point they will be out of the woods for the most part on the Matt Duchene front. Again, we are awaiting Barry Trotz. Tanner says the idea of Askarov and Wedgwood essentially splitting backup duties was absurd. The Predators would have to consistently put Wedgwood on waivers, and that's too much travel for Askarov. Well, they brought Askarov up last year for a couple of spot starts. And they'll do the same thing this year. They don't have to clear a roster spot every time. You can finagle the goalie position however you want. And I expect Barry Trotz to do that. I expect Barry Trotz to go into games where Saros is getting the night off. And so Saros will be put down. What is that, Ian? Like an emergency, roster?
The emergency roster call-up kind of thing, an emergency situation. But that's usually for injuries.
Right. Well, Saros has got a bad foot today. And Askarov's going to come up and he's going to start. And then he goes back down to Milwaukee. Barry talked about that on the show last year, that had the team not been in the playoff race, that he wanted more games for Askarov. Like down the stretch, he wanted more call-ups and wanted him to come up and get in there for a game and then go back down to Milwaukee. And we saw that's what they did with Saros. Now, they did that with Saros because they were trying to protect him from the expansion draft, but that's exactly what they did. A lot of people are saying the Predators need to get rid of Dante Fabro. I've seen that a lot on the chat. So there's got to be some money that's coming from somewhere. Like there's got to be, again, with all this money that they're going to be spending in order for them not to be capped out, it would not surprise me to see them try to move a Fabro. He doesn't have a lot of money, but again, it's a little bit of money. Novak at $3 million. I think that might be a move that they regret, because I think they may like to have the $3 million back. Maybe they move Novak, but I don't think they're done. And Fabro certainly would be, in my opinion, on the chopping block. And here's my only problem with Fabro. I think Fabro is a legitimate NHL defenseman on the third pair. And when you're drafted in the first round, you're not drafted to be on the third pair. And right now, that's what Fabro is. Now, it's kind of like a hybrid because they stick him with Yossi a lot. And so that's technically the first pair. But then you look at the amount of minutes he plays when he's in there, and it's really more like third pair minutes. I think that they signed Fabro as an insurance policy in case they couldn't come to a deal with Carrier, that they couldn't come to a deal on a Brady Shea type, and they didn't want to be stuck with their pants down. And I at least understand why it is they would do that. And so when it comes to the Fabro deal, I think that he may be on the move. Does Cap Friendly still work?
Yes, I believe Cap Friendly has them around $500,000 in cap space. I think I saw.
And do we have the number on the Wedgwood deal?
1.5 per.
Okay, I mean, that's fine.
2 years, 3 total.
Okay, so when it comes to the Predators and their cap, they're going to have to make some moves. There's no way Barry's going to go into the year with $595,000 in cap space. So I'm just kind of looking at it right now, and I'm looking at Fabro's number, 2.5 for Fabro. I think they'd probably like to clear that. And then I don't think you can get rid of Luke Schen's 2.75, but I'm sure they'd like to get rid of that too. I think Novak could be on the move at $3.5 million.
I don't know. They just signed him.
I know, but again, $3.5 million, and he's not good. And I think if they had seen the Vancouver series ahead of time, I think they wouldn't have extended him. But again, here's the other thing about Barry Trotz. He tells you the truth. When Barry Trotz gets up there, and again, we are awaiting Barry up at the podium any second now. When Barry gets up there, he tells you the truth. He came on the show Monday and he said, we're going to be active in free agency. They've been active. I asked him if they were in on the big names. He said they were. They signed big names. He told us consistently he wanted to do a deal with UC Saros. And we kept looking at it saying, well, is Barry holding his cards? No, he was telling the truth. So when he gets up there and he starts talking about these guys, he won't get up there and just say, yeah, I'm going to get rid of Fabro. But he'll let us know, if he's not so sold. That's why we don't sit around and wait for Cody Glass and Tomasino anymore, because Andrew Brunette, who, by the way, will be on the show at 5 o'clock, Andrew Brunette made it incredibly clear in his postseason press conference that unless those guys show up to training camp and wow him, he's not worried about them. But I do think that, again, as the people are saying, that I do think that there is some truth there when it comes to Fabro and maybe the idea of them needing to move on from Fabro and everything else. Apparently, is Trotz up there now?
Not that I've seen on
Okay.
the online stream.
Because apparently they've got on Twitter, apparently they have Barry Trotz quotes. So I don't know where the Barry Trotz press conference is. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Do you have the Predators website up?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so maybe we need to open up that Zoom that the Predators sent out there. If the Predators
Believe
website.
that was the Zoom for the Stamkos,
Stamkos
availability for later. They said they're supposed to be streaming on the website, and it has it on here, but it's just kind of refreshing.
So we're trying to get the Predators website to get us the stream. So if you're sick, because I look at the text line on the YouTube chat and everybody's all worked up and been out of shape that we don't have the Trotz thing. And I think it was because the Predators said, oh, yeah, we'll run it off our website. And I don't know what to tell you guys. That one you got to put on the Predators, unfortunately. I mean, that is disappointing, to say the least. Just reading through some of these. Let's see. Robbie says, Barry Trotz said, we're continuing down the path that I tried to lay out when I first got here. Anytime that we can add a cultural serial winner type of player, we're going to do that. And Trotz, players know players. Players know players, and they know what we're trying to do, and we're trying to win. All right, we're going to figure out if we can get the Predators on this stream. We'll do that. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025-1063 The Game. All right, we promised the Barry Trotz press conference, and the Nashville Predators were supposed to be running the press conference, and apparently the Predators are having technical issues. Somebody claims on the YouTube chat, don't blame the team for you not having sports reporters. We have sports reporters. Robbie is at the press conference right now, but we don't have the press conference because where the Predators said it would be, it is not, and apparently I am being told this is an NHL issue. So the NHL, so somebody said, don't blame the team. You're right. Shouldn't blame the team. Apparently this is a league issue that all their stuff's down. And honestly, I'm pretty pissed about it, but it is what it is. So we can only go off of what the quotes that are coming out are, which really sucks because when it comes to the things Barry Trotz says, you know, Barry says so many things. Like he'll answer a question for 2 minutes. And in the 2 minutes, there's a little something in there that usually is like, whoa. But when it's just, you know, a reporter just saying, oh, yeah, this is a very important day for us because these are the guys that we are trying to build. And this is, you know, it is what it is. Alex Doherty says, Barry Trotz says that, well, I'm going to just say that he said, even though it's not included in the tweet. The caliber of player he signed today are not focused on the money. They want to win, and that's why they're coming to Nashville. I think money's probably pretty important. Trotz says his priority for the day was to fix the back end of the team first. After that was done, he targeted offense, especially the center ice position. So that's what Alex Doherty says that Barry Trotz has said so far. And again, this is what I hate about not having the actual Barry Trotz press conference is that there's always some hidden Easter eggs in there. There's always like a little something that Barry Trotz says that when Barry puts it in there, that it's like, this is what he's saying. And I go back to last year when they dumped Duchesne and we had an interview with Trotz the day before, and Trotz said that it's his job to figure out whether or not you're part of the solution or part of the problem. And I thought to myself, maybe that's the case. A lot of you guys are saying the Predators are going to get rid of Cody Glass. Cody Glass is making $2 million. And apparently somebody's saying, but again, if Cody Glass is signed to a contract that's going to pay him $2.5 million, don't they have to get somebody to take that $2.5 million? So in order to clear the $2.5 million, if they've only got $500,000 in cap space and they want somebody to take Cody Glass's $2.5 million, considering that Cody Glass sucks, don't you then have to call somebody and like say, okay, and we'll give you a second round pick? And is it really worth the second round pick to get Cody Glass off the team because you had to bring back Carrier? Like, I'm not sure if that's exactly what I feel is the right direction for the team or anything like that. One person says, you keep talking about Stamkos' age. He's still producing more than most, if not all of the team. There is zero indication that Stamkos has fallen off. So that's actually not true. There is one thing that does concern me, and I am actually fascinated about what Trotz or Brunette, and Brunette will join us at 5 o'clock, and he is calling us. So unless his phone doesn't work, there's no way the NHL or the Predators could screw that up. But there is one thing that I do find concerning. Plus minus is not the end all and be all of the NHL. But I also think it's not nothing. Basically, what plus minus is it is an assessment of how your team does when you are on the ice. So if you are plus 30, that means that your team scores 30 more goals when you are on the ice than when you're not. And that's good. Like, that's plus 30 is very good. Now, I'm sure there are some players like, say, Zach Hyman, who have incredible plus minuses because he plays with Leon Draisaitl or plays with Connor McDavid. And so, you know, he's always out there cherry picking based off of McDavid. And that would, I would assume, allow him to have a much higher plus minus. Stamkos, over the course of his career, is plus 46, which is solid. His first 2 years in the league, he was minus 13 as an 18-year-old, and then he was minus 2. Other than that, in 2012-2013, which was a lockout-shortened season, and he was 22 years old, he was minus 4. Other than that, he has been a plus player his entire career. including 2 years ago, plus 24. 2022, 2023, so 2 seasons, he was -5. Last season, he was -21. Again, not to say that plus minus is the end all or be all, because it's not. But I do feel like that is an indication that he's probably not as impactful as he was before. Again, he was making $11 million. Now he's making 8. There's a reason he's making 8. He's not the same player, but he did score 40 goals. Stamkos' age is a real thing. I mean, I think all their ages are a real thing. In 3 years, Stamkos will be 37, Josi will be 36, Marchessault will be 36. If those guys aren't supplemented by younger players that can come in there and make a difference, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Somebody says that no way you said Hyman is cherry picking. A ton of his goals came from being on net. I mean, I'm sorry. Do you think Zach Hyman's a 50-goal scorer on his own? If Zach Hyman was a 50-goal scorer on his own. Now, Austin Matthews scores 70 goals. And Austin Matthews is worth what? $13 million or somewhere in that range?
Yeah, something like that. 12, 13.
Okay. If Zach Hyman was a 50-goal scorer on his own, we'd be sitting here saying, how is Edmonton one day going to be able to afford him? But he's not. Instead, we're sitting here saying, what is Edmonton going to do with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid? Now, I'm not saying that Zach Hyman is Tommy Novak. But if you put Forsberg with McDavid, Forsberg might have 75 goals. That's the difference. So when it comes to Hyman, he plays with McDavid. He scores 50 goals. Every time McDavid scores a goal on the ice or somebody else scores a goal because of McDavid, he gets a +1 in the plus minus. I assume his plus minus is incredible. Stamkos, again, for most of his career, +9, +2, +3, +3, +18, +4, +14, +4, +24, -5, -21. That is a concern. At least as far as I'm concerned. One texter says, so many variables go into the plus-minus stat. How do you put any weight into that stat? So here's how I would say I put weight into it. I'm comparing it to what's happened in the past. I'm looking at Stamkos' career. And when he was with Ben Bishop, it was this. And when it was with Vasilevsky, it was pretty consistent. And now it's -21. I mean, I absolutely think that Stamkos' age is a factor here, but I still would have signed him. The only move that I'm critical of, well, I shouldn't say the only move, but I am in total favor of the Stamkos signing and of the Marchessault signing. You can talk me into the Brady Shea signing because it sounded like Brady Shea was who everybody wanted, and Brady Shea clearly wanted to go play for you. But it sounded like he was kind of the top defenseman on the market, and then everybody else behind that, whether it was his own teammate Brent Pesce or whether it was Chris Tanev or whomever, they were kind of second behind Brady Shea. So in order for you to get the top guy on the market, you got to give him a 7-year deal. He'll be 37 when the deal's up, and I'm not sure I necessarily like that. But again, I think they're probably looking at it saying, this is going to put him basically in line with Josi to a certain extent, or he's going to be a little bit behind Josi, but then he'll be kind of finishing up after Yosi's gone. You could talk me into the Shea deal. I'm not a huge fan of the Saros deal. I'm not a huge fan of the Carrier deal. And the Saros deal, I'm just not a huge fan of because I do think that money will be better used in the future if you've got a young goalie on more forwards that score more goals. Because, okay, so we got Barry Trotz. Here's Barry Trotz.
Envision Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist staying together, and Stamkos and Marchessault with Evangelista or someone else?
I am not the coach. I will let the coach. I learned this one. If I do the lines and they don't work, I'll get blamed for it, or you force things. I told you guys about the laser beams. I got to play this guy. I'm going to let that play out with Bruno. Bruno will talk to the players. He'll get a feel for it. I mean, last year it became very obvious that there was some kind of chemistry between Forsberg and O'Reilly early, and then you were just looking for that other piece. And then Gus had a fantastic year and fit in there and did really well. So, I would think that probably Bruno will say, let's see if it's working. I've had the same thing where I had one line, that works 1 year and they hit it off and sort of hit a home run basically, and then next year they come together and you're like, oh, where are you guys? And so you mix it up again. So I'll let that decision go to Bruno. But as I say, just I sort of look at our future as, we've got people in the right seats, and if we play the same way, people are all on board and have the buy-in in the right seats, then we're going to just be fine.
Yeah, Barry, obviously a lot of signings today, a lot of money spent as well. Probably not a ton left right now. Or are you kind of comfortable with where you are, or do you envision needing to create a little bit more?
Well, I think what I want to do is, and I try to do this with our players, is I'm probably going to look to do a move or two just to create a little bit more separation so that we do have that. But the great thing is that we've got lots of depth within the organization, and at a entry level guys that are young that we can use. So I think we're okay. But I'm probably looking to move probably at least one guy.
You added some big pieces, obviously, today. When you first started, you talked about kind of a reset window. Do these signings today change for you the timing of a contending window at all?
No, I said I don't. I probably didn't know myself, and I think I was pretty transparent on that. I said I don't know if we're a bad team or not a great team, or we're sneaky good. If you remember, I think I said that many times, and I said you don't know. And we're very fortunate to have Bruno as our coach. We're very fortunate to have the leadership that we do in Philip and Ryan and Yos and Gus and Colton Sissons and Juice, and I'm probably missing someone. And then they pulled it together. They pulled together, and the core is really good. Every team that is a good team in the National Hockey League has, I think, a couple components. You got to have good goaltending. You got to have an elite defenseman. You got to have an elite scorer on the one side. You need an elite centerman or a top centerman, and you need depth. And I start looking at our team now, and we check a lot of boxes. We did get a little bit older. I understand that. But I do know that age is an important factor, because Father Time always catches up to you. But if you have a highly competitive nature and you're bought into your craft, you can play for a long time in this league. And all these guys are of that DNA. And so that's why I think with the youth that we can inject in the next couple of years, and the culture that we have with the veteran players, I think allows us to get into a window. We're in a great division. I mean, you look at teams like Dallas and Colorado, and on the other side you got Vegas and Edmonton, and you just go, the list goes on and on. You don't know. You want to be as competitive as you can, and you want to win. And we got guys that are craving to win.
You just led into my question there, right up here.
Oh, hello.
Hello. With the three players, Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea, all being 30 and up, what about their form made you confident in the contracts and the fit for the Predators?
I tried to say that in this last question, is that you're highly competitive, driven people. age doesn't matter. I mean, you look at guys like Joel Pavelski and people like that. They are dedicated to their craft. They're productive guys. They pull people along. These guys are of that sort of ilk, if you will. They're extremely competitive, and I think by us being a deeper team, you can take a little bit of the save some of the tread on the tire, if you will, and with the youth that we have, I think we're going to be hopefully fine. If you don't know how it's going to play out because you got 82 games, a couple things happen and it could shorten things, but there's no guarantee in life. So we're going to put the best people and the best players on the ice and hopefully win some hockey games and take this to where we want to go.
Robbie? Barry, back on the Saros front, you said last week on the radio that he had probably earned some trade protection. What, if any, trade protection is included in the Saros contract?
Yeah, he's got some. We've got a window where, I think with any agent, we left the last few years. I think you need that in any protection. He's earned the right for protection based on what he's done for the franchise and what he's done in this league. I think the one thing with goaltending is there's only one goaltender can play. You got 6 defensemen, you got 12 forwards, so sometimes it's easier. If a player is sort of slowing down or what have you, he can still play and still be fairly productive. But a goaltender, if you slide off too much or someone passes you, you don't need to be sitting. I don't think goaltenders want to sit. They want to play, especially Juice. Juice plays a lot, and hopefully we can with our group we can use our team, and as long as we play at the level I think we are capable of, Juice won't have to play 82 out of 82. It seems like he does every year.
Do a couple more for Barry, so then we can get set up for the Stamkos soon. We'll go to Jim.
I know it's been a busy couple of days, but at any point today, did you kind of sit back and think of previous July 1st and your first go around with this team and maybe some of the names that were added and you're even dealing with like $12 million worth of dead cap space and we're still able to make these moves today. Can you speak to maybe where the franchise has come, in your last couple of years, as well as ownership's buy-in allowing you to do this?
Yeah, we did have this. I think it was towards the end of last night, where we started putting we had some of the pieces sort of, if we can do this, if we can connect on this. I mean, we started reflecting a little bit, and it's funny that you asked that. Hopefully we weren't around the corner. But we talked about, I remember one trade deadline, I think we finally signed, it felt like it was like day 7 of free agency, and I think we signed Clark Wilm and Brent Gilchrist way back when, and nothing against the players, but it was really deep into like 7 or 8 days after the trading deadline, and you look, it's pretty remarkable when you sit back and what we did last year and the dead cap space that we have and do what we just did, and it is pretty remarkable, and that's a tribute to all the hard work that David Poyle put in before me to set this up, where we have prospects, we have cap space, or we have, we made some good value signings, and we let it sort of come to the forefront today, where we could take our shot. I asked our scouts at the draft floor last year to get people out of their seats, take your shot. And it's probably my job. If I say that to the amateurs on the pro side, I think I owe those shots. Let's take our shots. And that's what we tried to accomplish. We tried to accomplish how we can make this, this team better on a nightly basis, and we were a good team last year. So, but we don't play the game on paper. So, it looks like a better team, looks like it's a more dangerous team, but you play the game on the ice. So there's going to be a lot of sweat, a lot of work, a lot of determination, and you got to have the buy-in. And there's a lot of talented teams last year that we, if you look on paper, you'd probably say, well, they were better than the Preds. These guys were a lot better than the Preds, and really they weren't.
Yeah, very similar question, but by most compilations, you probably just signed 3 of maybe the top 10 free agents on the market or so. You've been around here for most of the franchise's years. Is there any other day that compares to this in terms of a roster construction and even in a short amount of time, not let alone one day?
Well, I think obviously I go back to the moment that we got Paul Kariya. That to me, that was a watershed moment in our franchise, because that was right off after the lockout, and Paul Kariya was very, very diligent and looked around at all the teams, and he said, which team has run really well, which team has prospects, which team has a chance to win, all those things. And he picked the Nashville Predators. To probably the rest of the league sort of went, what? And to me, that was a watershed moment. The other watershed moment to this franchise is the offer sheet on Shea Weber. Ownership had to really step up then, and they did. And they should get a lot of credit for that. So, yeah, those two things come to mind, because you can, on the one, someone said this is well run. Someone of a guy that's an absolute superstar in the Hall of Fame, and another one that's going in the Hall of Fame. That this franchise said, you know what, we're not going to get bullied around, and they stepped up.
With those, above those even, or what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I'll let. It's too close to evaluate. Well, ask me in 10 years where it ranks. But I think it was important to send a message to our own players that we want to win, and they want to win. And so I think we're in a partnership. Our organization and the players, the ownership, all that. We work in unison, and very few. I said this before. I've been in a couple other places, and they're very well-run organizations. They're great people, all that. This is a Smashville. Unless you're here, you don't understand. And it's a pretty cool place.
It's a good way to end. Thank you very much for your time, Barry. We appreciate it.
All right. Good night.
All right, that was Barry Trotz, and a couple of things in there saying that he does want to move at least one guy off the cap, which I do find to be a little fascinating. Was asked about the lines. I did love the fact that we, when the stream got up, we said, okay, here's Barry Trotz, and he was asked a question about the lines, and his reaction was, I am not the coach. Well, the coach will be joining us at 5:00, and we will ask the coach about the lines and what he sees fit there. He was asked about the cup window. And again, Barry's a straight shooter, but he didn't really want to dive into that much. I don't know if you noticed that, but the things he didn't want to dive into, Robbie asked about trade protection. Ian, what did you make of his trade protection? You know what? Let's just do this on the other side. 615-737-1025 is our phone number to get our text lines out. So you got to give us the real calls, and the YouTube chat. We'll hit into that as well on YouTube for the Stillman and Company program. And we'll do that coming up next. And then he talks about moving somebody off the roster. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 possibilities. We'll get to that coming up next. First, let's talk Window Nation. I love Window Nation. Window Nation is an honest company. They showed up to my house. I assume, ready to make a sale, ready to sell me new windows. They sat there and they showed me the great models, the energy efficient, the good, better, best, everything. And I said, okay, which one should I get? And then they looked at my windows and said, you do not need to replace your windows. I said, that is how I know I've got an honest company that I talk to the people about. It is hot out there, and you know it. And if you've got inefficient windows, that means high utility bills all year long. Window Nation has some of the most energy-efficient windows you can buy, and they were recently ranked high on Forbes' list of best window installation companies. And again, the way they treated me, I thought was just absolutely first class. Right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows for free, plus 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. 0 down, no interest or payments for 2 years. Stop paying more than you have to. Schedule that in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90NATION or visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
We just identify you with the Vegas Golden Knights there from the beginning almost. Conn Smythe winner. How difficult was it to have to leave, and how excited are you about Nashville?
It was pretty tough, to be honest. Like the tough part of it also was there wasn't really a decent offer on the table. I don't think they tried their best to keep me, but I mean it's a part of the business, and they have probably other plans. So that's the business we're in. So you move on, and I think Nashville is was the best fit for me. I'm at a point in my career I just don't want to play hockey games. I want to win hockey games. So going there, I think everybody's on the same page, and we want to win. So definitely excited to get there.
Jonathan Marshall Show. Ian, you know what I like in that too?
What's that?
We want to win.
Not almost win.
We don't want to almost win. This is not St. Louis, folks. This is a real city. Barry Trotz said that a bunch in his press conference. So, what did you make of Trotz when Robbie asked him about the trade protection on Saros? And he was like, well, it's down the end, agents want to get protection and, there's only one goalie and, he really didn't go there. Were you surprised by that?
What do you mean as far as like how many teams and when it kicks in and all that kind of stuff?
He did
No
not lay it out.
specifics. No, he did not give the specifics.
Here's what my gut, let me make sure I use that one. Here's what my gut tells me. It's going to be probably a full no move or close to a full no move at the beginning of the deal. But at the end of the deal, I believe that the Predators will have options. Now, what I find fascinating by that is the way Trotz made it sound was he almost kind of made it sound like it was the opposite of that. But my guts, G-U-T, my gut says that it becomes more liberal later than it is earlier. I was surprised by that Barry didn't just say, he's got a full no move for the first 3 years of the extension, and then after that it goes to a 10-team list because all that stuff's going to come out anyways. Unless by Washington buying cap friendly, we won't be able to find that out. He was asked about the cap and said he wants to move somebody off the roster. In my opinion, there are 4 possibilities. Novak at 3.5, Glass at 2.5, Shin at 2.75, Fabro at $2 million. My guess is he'd probably like to move 2 guys off that list. The number 1 guy he'd like to move off is Cody Glass, but this is not football. You can't just cut the guy because he sucks. You have to find somebody to take that $2.5 million and woof, 2.5 for Cody Glass. All right, let's get to your thoughts on it on the YouTube chat. We'll do that coming up next. Let's talk White Bison. That's right. Andrew Brunette, by the way, will join us at 5 o'clock. Let's talk White Bison. White Bison is your local coffee shop with specialty coffee and so much more. Explore their selection of premium coffee blends, refreshing iced drinks, and food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. And download the app and join the White Bison Rewards program today, where you can place orders on the go anytime, get rewarded, and earn free coffee. Stop by White Bison and brighten your day with a sweet cinnamon beehive latte, an iced honey nut macchiato, which is probably good for this weather outside, or the vanilla rooibos tea latte. Find your perfect cup at White Bison, where it's finely crafted for you every single day. That's White Bison and twice daily. What are you craving?
Yeah, Barry, obviously a lot of signings today, a lot of money spent as well. Probably not a ton left right now. Or are you kind of comfortable with where you are, or do you envision needing to create a little bit more?
Well, I
going
think
forward?
what I want to do is, and I try to do this with our players, is I'm probably going to look to do a move or two just to create a little bit more separation so that we do have that. But the great thing is that we've got lots of depth within the organization, and at a entry level guys that are young that we can use. So I think we're okay. But I'm probably looking to move probably at least one guy.
Okay, that was Barry Trotz. And I'm going to give credit where credit's due here. Seth in the YouTube chat says, not a strong endorsement from Trotz on Gus Nyquist. Yeah, quote, yeah, he worked last year, but sometimes that stuff doesn't always carry over. And then Chase texted me, and he said, do not rule out moving Gus Nyquist. I got to say, at $3.185 million, I am ruling out moving Gus Nyquist.
How come?
Because he's a top 6 forward, and great. I mean, is Marchessault better? Yes. Is Stamkos better? Yes. But the biggest problem with this team last year was they had one line that could score, and that line happened to have Gus Nyquist on it. Well, if you get rid of Gus Nyquist and you move, say, Marchessault up to that line, now it's like, okay, well, now Stamkos has to do all of the scoring for the second line. I'm not sure I like that idea. Their theory would be that Evangelista could play on the other side of it, and they'd put Tommy Novak on the wing, but I'd just rather get rid of Tommy Novak. And Tommy Novak makes more money. Like, Gus Nyquist didn't do much in the playoffs last year, but like Gus Nyquist can play, and he can play in the playoffs. Is he a great player? No. But he can play. I'm not sold after that Vancouver series that Tommy Novak can play. I'm just going to be completely frank with you guys. I think that if we had seen the Vancouver series, I'm not sure they would have re-signed Novak. I think they would have said thanks, but no thanks. And I'm not saying it was bad to sign Novak, because the same applies. 3.5 over 3 years, which tells us if he pops like Kevin Fiala, you won't get burned saying what could have been. But if the guy's not very good, then you can suck it up and you'll be okay at $3.5 million, except now where you've got $500,000 worth of cap space. Boy, a lot of people are mad. So I told a story earlier today that one of my friends from college, who actually happened to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneers cheerleader, she is a huge Lightning fan. And she told me, she was like, take good care of Stammer. And she was like, I love him. But she said she would not have paid him $8 million. She would not have even paid him $5 million, to which I was like, what? You wouldn't have paid him $5 million? And she said, no, I just think it's the combination of everybody else. And I mean, I got to tell you, a lot of people are mad about that. So I'm going to read the text that I received, and then you tell me. I just don't think he's as good of a player without some of the guys he's had around him, like Cirelli, Point, Palat, Gord, Colton, Hagel, etc. We just learned who Ross Colton was last week. I'm sorry. I think that those guys, this is just my gut. Now, Kucherov is great.
Yeah.
Like Kucherov's a bad boy.
He can set him up pretty well in the PP.
And Braden Point is good too. I think those guys are better because they played with Steven Stamkos than Steven Stamkos is because he played with those guys. That's just my gut feeling. But the one thing I'll say, I don't watch Tampa Bay every day. And when you don't watch Tampa Bay every day, it's hard to have a real feeling about that team. One person says, it sounded like your friend just started watching hockey after they made their cup run. I mean, they made their cup final run like 10 years ago. If you've been watching hockey for 10 years, you probably get the NHL. This idea that you didn't come out of the womb watching hockey, so you don't know anything about anything, is just so ridiculous. They got to the cup final and played, what was it? Who'd they lose to like 10 years ago? It was Chicago with Taves and Kane. So if somebody's watching, in my opinion, if somebody's watching NHL for 10 years, they understand. She just thinks that it's the other people that set Stamkos up. And as a Predators fan, I hope she's wrong. All right, Andrew Brunette joins us next. The lines, where are they all going to go? What about the culture of serial winning and how much is that a factor in whether or not this team is going to win? The expectations and so much more. We'll do that coming up next with Coach Andrew Brunette, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. The Nashville Predators, the winners of free agency, going away today on July 1st. I know we're in Nashville, Tennessee, but apparently it feels like we're celebrating Canada Day around here. UC Saros kicked it off with an 8-year, $7.74 AAV. Scott Wedgwood is going to back him up. 2 years, 1.5. Alexander Carrier, 3 years, 3.75. Of course, followed by the big ones. Jonathan Marchessault, 5 years, 5.5. And Steven Stamkos to go with Brady Shea. Stamkos, 4 years by 8. And Shea, 7 years by 7. Which means I think I went into this last week and I said the Predators needed like 4 more forwards and 3 more defensemen. And it seems like they're pretty close to getting there. And they do still have all of the young assets. You know, this isn't like the NFL where the salary cap is fake, but they do. The thing they spent today was money. They did not spend future assets. For instance, I wouldn't say it's a 1-to-1 comparison, but I look at Brady Shea and I think, okay, that is the replacement for Matthias Ekholm, which is the kind of player that I would still love to have on the Predators. But with Ekholm, they received a couple of picks, including a first rounder in last year's draft, which ended up being Tanner Mullendijk. And they received Reed Schaefer, a young prospect who I think is still at Milwaukee, who may be getting a call up sooner rather than later. And so because of that, you know, they're now replacing it and they're just spending money. And they still have all the assets that are all the picks, all the prospects. I mean, all the different guys that they could possibly ask for. And Ian, my call screener went out. So if you just want to let me know when Andrew Brunette's ready, we will be joined momentarily by Andrew Brunette. Barry Trotz took to the podium today, was asked about the lines because I am actually fascinated by that. Barry Trotz said, I am not the coach, i.e., ask the coach what he's going to do with the lines. We are going to ask the coach. He said he wants to move at least one guy for the cap. And we talked about the possibilities of that. It looks like, you know, Novak at 3.5, Glass at 2.5, Schenn at 2.75. I'm not sure who would want Luke Schenn, but Schenn at 2.75, Fabro at $2 million. He'll probably move one of those guys off. They have about $500,000 in cap space. So when all is said and done, they'll probably have about $4.5 million in cap space, which means that come trade deadline time, if this team is in contention, and I fully expect that this team will be in contention, if this team is in contention, then I think that we will foresee the Predators probably try to make a move where somebody eats that money or retains their own salary or, you know, sends it through somewhere else. But that's what all those picks are for, in case they want to do that. He said there is some trade protection on the Saros front, would not get in to what kind of trade protection they gave him. Again, my gut's telling me that it is very strict on the front end and it is very open on the back end. But again, we'll wait to see what that all ends up being. Was asked about the cup window, and he said he didn't know. And what I think that really means is I think that's really Barry Trotz saying, I don't want to get into it and sit there and say that we have cup expectations. But I think there's a chance that when he talks about, hey, we're telling we're telling everybody that we want to win. And that's what these players are seeing when they come out, is that they want to win and we want to build them a winner. I mean, I think you're kind of saying it without saying it, that they think they're in a cup window right now. And the one thing I'll say is that I do believe that if you had Steven Stamkos or you had Jonathan Marchessault or you had those guys on the team in the Vancouver series, I think you would have won the Vancouver series. And once you get to that stage at the NHL playoffs, I know it's crazy because the cup final ended about a month and a half after the Vancouver series was over, but that's the difference in this sport. I mean, these are razor thin margins. So does adding a top pair defenseman, adding a 40-goal scorer, adding another one that won the Conn Smythe, does that make up that gap? And we are joined now by Predators head coach Andrew Brunette on the program. First off, Andrew, happy Canada Day to you.
Yeah, no kidding. And to the Nashville Predators.
I mean, crazy. So I want to start with this. You are not the general manager of this team. So when it comes to spending the money and getting the guys and there's all the different scouts and there's the assistant GMs and of course there's Barry. So when it came to, hey, we're going for it in free agency, what was kind of your opinion on this? What were you saying in those meetings? And then how surprised were you to see it all come to fruition today?
Well, I think we prepare in all kinds of different ways. I wasn't really expecting all this to happen. You're hoping. You just don't really feel it was going to happen until it happens. And obviously, Barry did an unbelievable job speaking to these guys and getting them to buy in what we're doing here. And so I think our brains, a lot of us were, okay, if we can't get this guy, if we get that guy, can we get this guy? So I think until it starts materializing and coming together, you really have no idea what's going to go on. So this morning when I went into the office, it was a really pleasant surprise. Marchessault was all of a sudden in play. And then Barry kind of closed those deals. So for us, it's just more kind of Christmas morning kind of thing. Surprised, happy, and excited.
So when the idea was kicked around in the office and they say, Coach, what would you think of adding Steven Stamkos to this group? Kind of, where did your head go there when you started to envision adding Stamkos to this group?
Well, I think it goes a million miles an hour. Obviously, just even thinking the power play and the shooting and the goal scoring and the Stanley Cups and the leadership and being the type of player he's been for such a long time, I think you get so excited. Again, it's like having too many gifts at Christmas where you don't really get to enjoy them and you move on to the next one. So I think they happen so quick. It's going to take me a little while to process, but you just light up seeing them. You're adding two 40-goal scorers to your lineup. And then your brain goes, where do they fit? How do they fit? Then it starts moving 100 miles an hour. So I'm in that department right now, but full of excitement. And obviously with Brady Shea at the back end, what he brings with his movement and his overall body of work. And then happy we got Carr back along with Juice. So it's been a unbelievable week for the Nashville Predators.
Okay, so Barry was asked about, who's going to play where, and he said he's not the coach. Well, you are the coach. So who centers the line with the 40-goal scorers on it?
Well, I mean, that's, again, like I said, my mind's going 100 miles an hour. There's all kinds of ideas, all kinds of thoughts. Stamkos has played center a lot in his career. He does a really good job there. He may slot in that. You got Tommy Novak, can kind of slip in there. So there's some different options. I think it'll all kind of play itself out as we get going. But I need to I got to put a little bit more thought into it exactly.
When you are building your team up for camp, and now you know who's going to be on your team. When you guys show up for camp, you have a pretty good idea. There might be a change here or there, but for the most part, you know who's going to be there. Do you put together a plan and say, okay, we're going to go into camp, and I'm going to keep that first line together from last year of Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist, and I'm going to put, say, Stamkos and Marchessault with the Tommy Novak, and then say, all right, I want to see how this looks in camp, or I want to see how this looks when we play some preseason games? Or do you just go into it and say, okay, I want everybody to get out there, do the drills, and then I'll start putting the chess pieces together? How do you go about that between now and October when the puck's dropped?
Well, I think for us, how we finished last year, especially the chemistry that our big line had, I think, obviously you'd like to see them start, see how they do, kind of fall from last year. And I think it'll be a moving part, how we, where we fit Marchessault and Stammer, and if they play together, who fits best with them, what do they need? And I think you get that as you get going. And obviously the exhibition games would be a great, with the inter-squad games and the small area games, it's hard to really see who fits with who. But I think once you get to the exhibition games, you kind of get a better feeling. So we might move guys in and out. We might add some different pieces, and that's what makes it fun. When you got all kinds of cards, you got to figure out how they work together, and we're really looking forward to it. It's better than not having any cards.
Andrew Brunette with his Predators head coach. Your system is very high octane, very taxing, and I do wonder, is there a thought about how you're going to kind of work in and fit in a 34-year-old Steven Stamkos or a 33-year-old Jonathan Marchessault, given the fact that as much as we'd love for these guys to still be 27 years old physically, they're probably not.
Yeah, I mean, what separates them, and I always separated them and separated Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist, is their hockey sense. And I think, the way that we like to play. For sure, there's a lot of skating, there's a lot of work, but there's also a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of being a step ahead. And they're both, one, they still can skate, and two, they're extremely intelligent players that anticipate extremely well. So it might take a little time. Obviously, we do things a little bit different. You could see from our body of work last year, took a lot of our guys, 15, 20 games, 30 games to get accustomed to. Very similar to, when I was in Florida and we had Sam Reinhart come in from Buffalo. It took him, 20 games to get going, but he figured it out real fast, and he had tremendous seasons for me. So I think we're really looking forward. It might take some time. It's always trial and error, but they've been leaders. They've won Stanley Cups. They've been a part of amazing runs. And I think they're just excited to come and fit in and play hockey here in Nashville.
Now, you are considered one of the best power play coaches, if not the best power play coach in the NHL, and you're adding Steven Stamkos to that. And I do wonder, going back to all the success that he's had over the years in Tampa, probably one, along with Ovechkin, probably one of the most dominant shooters on the power play in this era. How do you envision using his skill set with the pieces that you currently have on the power play?
Yeah, I'm obviously he's arguably one of the best all time on the power play, where he sits kind of Ovechkin-like, and there's very few like him. Obviously, for him, it's going to be a little adjustment. I mean, he's been in Tampa for as long as he's had. They've had unbelievable success. Their power play works like clockwork because they've been together for so long. So, I'm excited to see it fit. I'm excited to see who fits with who, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some work on our side to try to find that cohesiveness and work, how do you get Phil in there, et cetera. So it's going to take a little work, and it's going to take a little bit unselfish kind of behavior by a lot of our players. And that's been one of, you talk about our identity, we don't want to change that because we've had many different pieces that play with no ego. And I'm expecting the same for our new guys to come in here and fit like a glove.
Andrew Brunette's with us. Speaking of the power play, I look at Edmonton, and I mean, they load up that first power play unit with Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Bouchard. I wonder, when you're thinking about this, just your philosophy before you get out there and try different people out. Would your philosophy be, hey, let's load up that first power play unit. You've got 340 goal scorers, Ryan O'Reilly, a first-line center, and Roman Josi on the back end of that? Or would you say, hey, let's even this out so that for the whole 2 minutes of a power play, we're going to at least have a 40 goal scorer on the ice at all times, say Marchessault's on the second unit, that you feel like there's still some scoring pop on that second unit? Philosophically speaking, are you more of a loaded up on the first unit, or are you going to want to spread it out between the two?
Well, I think I've done it both ways. I think, to start, I think you'd like to load it up and just see how they feel with each other. Do we have the rhythm and the cadence necessary to be successful? Are they comfortable in different spots in the power play? So I think it's going to, you're asking some guys to be a little bit uncharacteristic, obviously with O'Reilly. Can he play net front? He's played in the bumper his whole basically career. Can we move him there? Can we move Phil to net front? Can we move Phil to the bumper? Can we keep Phil where he is? Same with Marchessault. So I think we're pretty confident where Stamkos is going to sit and where Jost will sit. But I think it's very similar to you're talking about who they play with and how they play. It'll work itself out. I've been around enough really good players and great players. They usually figure it out. So let's just see where they're at. And if not, we've got Tommy Novak, we've got Evangelista, we got Gus Nyquist. I mean, if they're on the other power play, if they're split up, I mean, those are unbelievable options too.
On the back end of this, Coach, do you view yourself, hey, Lauzon and Carrier last year really found something? Fabro has played with Josi. Or how do you kind of view the pairings? Are you going to want to put Brady Shea with Josi, even though they're both left shots? You're going to want to break them up, and then it's almost like you've got two number one defensemen for those top pairs. What are you thinking on defense?
Well, I think the Lowe's and Carr, the chemistry they have and the enjoyment they have playing with each other, would be really tough to move them around. Fab's had good success with Yost. I think with Yost has been really good on the right side, so you might try Brady Shea, see Yost on the right, depending on where we're at. Then you got, Schenner, and then we got a plethora of young defensemen coming. So again, it's so early, your mind's racing. You're trying to figure out where everything fits. It's kind of like a massive jigsaw puzzle here, but the pieces are pretty dynamic. So, it's going to be a summer here for the next 2 months of trying to figure that out.
Andrew Brunette's with us, head coach of the Nashville Predators. How much does winning in the past mean to you for those same players winning in the future with this team right now, but also what it means for Evangelista, what it means for this whole plethora of young guys that have been brewing, whether it's Kimmel or LaRue or Svechkov or Schaefer or whomever. How much does that matter? Because Stamkos has won, O'Reilly has won, Marchessault has won. Brady Shea's been a part of some really good teams in Carolina. I mean, how big was that winning to you as the coach?
Well, I think you could see the effect it had on our organization this year and our young kids and the Evangelistas and the Novaks and the Lozans and the Cars, like that, to be around Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough, guys that Luke Shen that comes in, guys that have won and they're as Barry will call them, serial winners. You can't have enough of them. And I think organizationally, culturally, that is imperative. And I've seen it firsthand with our group from watching how they mesh with Ryan O'Reilly and these guys and watching them grow as not just hockey players, but leaders. I mean, we're getting lucky here. We got obviously we got a great first tier. We got a secondary tier, and some of our young guys are learning and they're falling that third tier. So you can't have enough of them, I think, as an organization. And we're blessed, and you get Stamkos and Marchessault that come in that have won. Brady Shea's been an outstanding team his whole career. So to have those guys come in, we're just going to, our young guys are sponges off them. And again, back to the identity and who we are, I think they'll come in and fit in real good.
Coach, how do you feel that the expectations have changed from where you were a year ago when we were talking about, hey, fans, like this may be a tough process here, and is going to have to adapt to a new system, and there's going to be some young guys that we're going to try to see who sticks and who doesn't, to today where we're talking about Steven Stamkos, Brady Shea, Jonathan Marchessault, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, UC Saros. Like, how have those expectations changed for you?
Well, I think you're just adding those guys. They change. I think expectations, every season's different. Obviously, there's a different set of expectations this year. I think there was an set of expectations last year where we were trying to build a culture and we were trying to find different pieces that fit and how they fit and where they fit. Now we have some big pieces. I still have to, find where they fit. So our expectations is just continue to build the journey that we're on with this group, continue adding. But the most important thing is we keep who we are. And I think that'll be, for me, the battle and the struggle and keep me up at night to get us ready for next season. And the pieces will fit. I just have to make them find a way to fit. So yeah, expectations is, I guess you can change, but they change every year. It's just a different set of circumstances, but it's hard every year in our league.
When you say that, I mean, I kind of have a theory that I guess I'd want your opinion on, which is I think the margins in this sport are so small that the difference between you winning the Vancouver series, I mean, it was a play here or there. It was a stop here or there. I think the difference between Vancouver losing that series to Edmonton was probably a goal here or there, a bounce here or there. And we saw how far Edmonton got to in the cup final, and the fact that Edmonton, again, the margins were razor thin. These are some big names and some big salaries. How much does that make you feel like maybe now you've got a better shot at capitalizing on those margins because of who's on this team as compared to last year when you guys were really riding a lot of momentum from guys that were having great seasons that maybe hadn't done as much in the past?
Yeah, we need everybody. I think that the margins, like you said, are razor thin. If you look at the Vancouver series, we played 360, 2 minutes, just, thinking back of it. And there was maybe 3.5 minutes of that changed that whole series. And those are just small margins. And you look at the Edmonton Vancouver series, you could almost say the same thing. And again, like you said, and I think every series has these little margins. And even though sometimes they don't go 7, they might go 6, but it's a cruel game sometimes. Just even think how Edmonton, lost game 7. It is cruel. But I think when you have guys, and you can look at Florida, they've gone through it a few times. They knocked on the door last year. So I think experience in our game means so much that you're able to grab those moments and understand those margins and understand when they're important. And talked about all year after, game 1 in Vancouver, we gave up 2 goals in 13 seconds. And that is a learning experience that you grow from. And you got to go through it a few times. And I think if you do, you kind of change the margins just by being able to handle those different types of situations.
Andrew Brunette's with us. 2 more for you, Coach. The first one is this. As a coach, what is the conversation with Yaroslav Askarov? I know you're not the general manager, so you're not picking who goes where, but this is a young player who's got a lot of promise, who I'm sure, while he's probably not mad at UC Saros or mad at the organization, there is only one goalie. What is kind of the conversation as the coach with somebody like that who at some point this year you guys may be relying on?
Yeah, I think you have to have some compassion for him. I think it is a really tough position. He's a young kid. He's put a couple years in the American League. He's feeling he's kind of getting ready. And you see Juice sign for the amount 8 years. And I'm sure that's really hard for any kid, any player to really wrap your head around it. And I think the emotions of it happens early on. I think sometimes get the best of you, or maybe you get you look too far ahead. I think my conversation with him would just be stay in the moment. Don't look too far ahead. Let's have our best hockey season. Come to camp, have a great camp, and let's move from there. And that's hard for young kids. So I think for me, again, to show a little compassion for him, a little understanding for him, and then help him try to just move forward slowly. It's not a race. He's such a young kid. He's going to be a great goalie, and we'll just continue progressing. And you never know what happens in this league. And I think if you take it a day at a time, come ready to play, that growth mindset we talk all the time, just keep getting better. When you keep getting better, everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, I'm not sure at 21 or 22, Coach, that I necessarily was going to be able to take things day by day, but that's just me. Last one for you. Andrew Brunette is with us. We're talking about all the older guys that we all know, that we're all excited about, the 40-goal scorers. We know that Evangelista kind of broke through last year, but there was kind of a group of guys between Parsonen and Tomasino, and even guys that maybe didn't come up like LaRue or Svechkov. When you get these guys in camp and they're all there, how much are you looking at them saying, okay, I might have 1 or 2 spots available. Who's going to win that spot? And how much do you think about those guys and consider those guys as being a part of your team for next year?
Well, I think they're in unbelievable spots. And I'm super excited for our youth of our organization. I think when you add these pieces, and I talked a little bit about it last year, the Marchessault, the Stamkos, the Gus Nyquist. And when you're a young player trying to, make a name in the NHL for yourself, to come up here and grow as a player, there's no better way to grow. I talked a little bit about culturally with O'Reilly coming in last year and how that's helped our young guys. And that's just on the culture part, but even on the playing part, when you play with better players as a young player, you learn how to play much faster, meaning you'll be a better player quicker. And I think you put them in better positions to succeed. It was hard on a lot of our young guys last year because, it's hard in our league if you're playing 3 on the line or, 2 and et cetera. But I think if you can get a really, arguably superstar players, excellent NHL players to play with, it helps your growth. It helps your confidence level. So there's going to be some great opportunities. It's kind of that influx of youth that we're going to need on different lines. I'm super excited to see how Luke Evangelista comes back ready to go in camp and Tommy Novak. And then, you talked about LaRue and Parsonen and, you go with Schaefer, Svechkov, Tomasino, all these guys. We're going to get some opportunities to play with some really good players. It's going to be really competitive for them. But I think to compete organizationally is the best thing for our group. And it's going to be a really fun camp. I can't wait to see our kids. Carl Taylor's done an unbelievable job down there, him and Scott Nickel growing them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them play with some really good players.
Andrew Brunette, head coach of the Nashville Predators. Coach, I don't congratulate people when they draft players or sign players because that to me is when the work starts. But it's very exciting around here. I'm not going to lie about that. So I just wish you a very happy Canada Day. And with development camp and everything else, we look forward to getting the season started here right around the corner.
All right, Jay. Thanks a lot, man.
Yep. Andrew Brunette, head coach of the Nashville Predators, joining us on the program. I just can't sit there and say congratulations on signing a guy. I'm almost more like, hey, congratulations on signing O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist last year because those worked out incredibly well. But it is exciting. It is exciting. All right, I got one big takeaway from that. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Truly's been a whirlwind of the last few days. Lots of emotions, probably into last night. Had a pretty good feeling that we were going to have to make a big decision when we woke up this morning. So probably not the best of sleeps for anyone in the household, but certainly we knew once the sun came up, there was going to be a decision to be made. We knew that there was obviously a lot of teams interested, with Nashville being one of them. And probably around, later in the morning here, we had narrowed it down, and Nashville was the team that we decided to sign with. So it certainly went pretty fast, but like I said, we're so excited to be part of this amazing franchise. Obviously, we saw what happened today with some of the other signings. So a great day to be a Nashville Predators fan. And like I said, very, very excited to be part of that.
That was Steven Stamkos. I got to tell you something. I think Stamkos is right up their alley. He is so boring. That was basically the same interview he did on TSN earlier today, which was like, hey, it was really tough for us to turn the page, but now we've turned the page and we're excited and we're like, but boy, I bet when it comes to playing hockey, I bet that guy is just relentless. And that is what Barry Trotz cares about. Now, I have really one big takeaway, or a couple of takeaways from what Andrew Brunette said. The first and foremost is, I think we know where his head is as far as the lines are concerned, without him just coming out and saying it, right? Saying, oh man, your head's moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, and so my head's moving a lot here. And I think there's something to that. Like, I think that's probably real. But at the same time, I think he's going to give that first line of Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, he's going to keep them together at the beginning of the year. So when they get to training camp and they play in the preseason, those three are going to be together. That's going to be their top line to start the season. I then asked him, I said, so who is going to center the second line? Who's going to center the line with the 2 40-goal scorers? Because remember, in Tampa, Stamkos, while he is technically a center, Stamkos has played on the left wing. I said, who's going to center that line? And he said, well, Stamkos could play center, but we got some other guys in there like a Tommy Novak that maybe, could. Translation to me, Novak's going to get the first crack at it. But if they feel like Novak is not up to snuff, they will move Stamkos to center and Evangelista will go up to that line. And they will then have the top 6 forwards in the top 6. If you do it my way, where, again, I would probably be more likely to see Sissons there than I would be to see Novak, just because I don't trust Novak. But if you did it my way, where you had Stamkos and Marchessault, on the wings, then you're not going to have Evangelista centering that line. He's going to have to play on the third line. If they just want to go with the top 6, he's going to move Stamkos to center. If not, Novak's going to be the number 2 center with Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. And I will say this, if you cannot play, like as we saw in the Vancouver series, if you cannot play the way Tommy Novak could not play in that series, if you cannot play with Steven Stamkos on one wing and Jonathan Marchessault, 40-goal scorer, a Conn Smythe on the other end, you can't play. It's as simple as that. So I think Novak's going to get the first crack there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they decide, you know what, let's put Evangelista on the wing, let's move Stamkos into center. The other thing was I asked him, I said, philosophically speaking, Ian, do you like how I did that, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't weasel out of it and say, oh, well, we haven't even gotten to training camp yet. I can't decide if I want to load up the first power play unit or if I want to spread it out with the second.
Just general principles.
Philosophically speaking, Jared, do you like boring interviews of guests, of writers, of other things that nobody cares about, or do you like to deliver takes on the radio? Philosophically speaking, I like to give takes on the radio. On a case-by-case basis, it might be different. Greg Bedard writes that Rand Carthon's a minority-driven hire from the league. Well, let's go talk to Greg Bedard and see if there's any truth behind that. Oh, it doesn't seem like there is. Okay. So it would different on a case-by-case basis, but philosophically speaking, I like giving out takes. And I said, would you load up the first power play? Because they can put 3 40-goal scorers Ryan O'Reilly and Roman Josi on a power play unit. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's Edmonton because McDavid is McDavid. And I'm not going to say that that's Colorado when Colorado is right, because that includes Landeskog being in there. And between, again, McKinnon, McCarr, and Rantanen, like those guys are still in their 20s for the most part. Like it's a little different. But it's hard for me to think that's not going to be one of the best power play units in the NHL. Ryan O'Reilly centers and then, kind of plays into that, in front of the net. And then Stamkos is standing there at the half wall. And then Forsberg probably is in that bumper spot. And then Marchessault's out on the other side. And Yossi's running point. It's hard for me to envision that you can have a much better power play unit than that.
I kind of like Forsberg on the opposite side of Stamkos on the wing on that. Because Forsberg likes to come down on a strong side there and take that wrist shot when he's kind of skating towards the net. And that could be a good little, hey, am I going to shoot this or am I going to try the cross crease pass over to Stamkos, who's wide open for the one-timer?
So you're putting Marchessault in the bumper?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm cool with that too. But do you load it up or do you run Gus Nyquist out there with that unit and you put Marchessault on the second unit so that, hey, you get a couple of cracks at it, they clear it, there's, 45 seconds left on the power play, and so you're going off for a change, and now you're hopping a 40-goal scorer off the bench, and he's getting right out there on the ice with Novak and Evangelista and that group.
I kind of like Marchessault on the second pairing in the same spot as on the second power play on the same spot as Stamkos.
So, but did you hear philosophically what he said?
About loading up?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
He said he's done it both ways, but philosophically, he leans more towards loading it up.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I vote loading it up.
We'll have to see.
I mean, what? Load it up, baby.
Well, that is tricky as far as righty-lefty shot when it comes to that, because then you'll have 3 right shots and 2 left shots. And one of your left shots will be O'Reilly, and the other one will be Josi. And then you'll have Marchessault, Stamkos, and Forsberg as your right shots. So you have to be able to make sure they're in the right position. And that's where maybe Marchessault could work in the high bumper there. If you have them stacked across in the line, Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, and he can either do the, kind of soft saucer pass into the middle to Marchessault, Forsberg, or he could go cross ice to Stamkos on the far side.
Sounds like you're talking yourself into loading it up.
It's possible. Yeah, it may be. I'm not
sure.
Load
it up, baby.
We'll have to see.
Hey, that's what we pay all that money for. I just say this right now. As a season ticket holder who's got tickets on one side of the ice by the net, which means that I'm watching them just fire pucks in there when they're on offense on that side of the net, load up the power play, baby. Now, the one thing I will say is, I watch Edmonton, and I was just amazed about the fact that McDavid and Draisaitl don't come off. You can't ask a 34-year-old Stamkos to be out there for 2 minutes at a time. You can't ask a 33-year-old Marchessault to be out there for 2 minutes at a time, especially the regular season. Maybe in the playoffs it's a little different, but I'm not sure you can ask much for that. By the way, I don't think it was an accident that Andrew Brunette dropped in the interview, it took Sam Reinhart a minute when he was playing for me in Florida, but when he came over from Buffalo, but translation, yeah, I did that. That 8 years, $8.65 million. All right, let's get to your thoughts on the YouTube chat or phone, 615-737-1025. Happy Canada Day to the Nashville Predators. It's Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
When you made your decision with Nashville, were you aware at the same time, hey, did they tell you, hey, Stamkos is coming too, Brady Shea is coming as well?
I didn't know about Brady, but I know about the rumors of Stammer. And at some point today, I called him. Me and him, we played together in Tampa. So I gave him a call, and we were like, yeah, we're doing it. So we were like, well, congrats. And he said, well, congrats to you too. So it was a pretty comical situation, but we're definitely excited to go there over there together.
So that was Jonathan Marchessault on TSN saying, yeah, I didn't know about Brady Shea, but I heard the rumors about Stamkos. And I said, screw it. I picked up the phone. I called Stamkos and said, hey, you going to Nashville? He said, yeah. I said, cool. So am I. And I think that that's probably a big deal as to why I think I will expect to see those two start out together with Marchessault and Stamkos. And I have a theory.
Okay, please share.
My theory is the Predators were probably interested. I mean, the Predators have been linked to Brady Shea the entire time. We said on the show Friday that I predicted that the Predators were going to sign Steven Stamkos and Brady Shea. And it wasn't that I had any insight. Yeah, I interview the general manager all the time, but it wasn't like I had any special extra insight into Barry Trotz that most people didn't hear when he was on the show. I hear some things here and there, but nothing that, again, it was just the public perception. And I kept hearing, the insiders, the Pierres, the Elliots, I just kind of felt like, yeah, this is going to be real. I think they're going to sign Stamkos. I think they're going to sign Brady Shea. And the other guy I thought they were going to sign was Chandler Stevenson, who was that center that I never heard of from Vegas that everyone said, oh, he played for Barry when they won the Cup in Washington. And, he would be a good second line center. And so I figured they were going to sign those three guys. Then Saturday, Tampa Bay made a move when they traded Sergachev to who they traded
Utah.
To Utah. That's right. They traded Sergachev, 26-year-old defenseman making $8.5 million. I couldn't believe they did it. But they traded Sergachev, and everybody said, oh, there's the cap space for Stamkos. And that's what I thought. I thought at that point, because all indications were,
yeah,
all indications were Tampa was going to try to lowball Stamkos, try to give him a long deal, long term, in order to keep a low AAV. And so I figured that what they were going to do was once they made that trade, okay, they figured that no, the market, Nashville, they're going to offer too much money. We have to just go ahead and do it. We have to just bite the bullet. We have to just do it. And so they decided, you know what, this is it. This is what we're doing. But then all of a sudden it came out that night, no. That move was for Jake Gensel, which I'm not farming their land. I don't know what they're thinking. That's their opinion. But when they did that, I think the Predators probably had the same reaction that I had, which was, oh, there's the money for Stamkos. Well, if we can't get in on Stamkos, who else can we get in on? Which is what made me think that's when they started talking to Marchessault. I think they went into this expecting Stamkos, and I was told on Friday when I asked about the rumors, I was told, we're going to try. That's what I was told. Not we feel confident we'll land. I was told we're going to try. So I think that they saw Stamkos as kind of their option A. And then they picked up the phone and they checked in on Marchessault when they were worried that they were going to lose option A, wanted to make sure they were ready for option B. So then they knew kind of what the market would be on Marchessault because they had kicked the tires when they saw that Stamkos might go back to Tampa Bay. So then when they got Stamkos done, they probably were looking at Stevenson. Stevenson ended up signing for more money and for a 7-year term in Seattle. And Barry was probably like, that's too rich for my blood, but he knows what the market for Marchessault is. So it was probably that was the pivot was Stevenson's too much. Let's go to Marchessault. And so I think Barry only kicked the tires on Marchessault because he was going to be out on Stamkos when they made the trade of Sergachev, only to find out that Tampa really didn't want Stamkos. They wanted to go with Gensel. So he knew and had prepared what it would take to land Jonathan Marchessault. Landed Stamkos, said, I can get them both. And that's what I think happened. That's kind of my hot take on all of that.
Okay.
Julien Brisebois, the general manager at Tampa Bay, has some thoughts on Stamkos. So I want to hit those for you next, and whatever phones that whatever YouTube chats we didn't get to, we'll do that next. And let's give something away. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to see Sebastian Maniscalco at Bridgestone Arena on July 21st. Good luck on that. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
You talked about the great memories you'll have, but will there be any tinge of bitterness that the organization didn't try harder to make it happen?
Well, listen, it's such an emotional time right now. I can't lie and say that, really since the beginning of last year when I didn't get an extension that, you're a human, you have emotions and you want things to go your way, but that's just your perspective. Everyone else has a different perspective. And, certainly Julian in Tampa has a different vision. And at the end of the day, it's a business. As harsh as it can be sometimes, you have to live with those decisions. And like I said, it's not for a lack of effort on my side of trying to make things work out in Tampa, but it's not fair to Nashville for me to sit here and say, I really wanted to be in Tampa. Everyone knows I did. It didn't work out. And I'm just as thrilled to be joining the Nashville Predators, like I just mentioned, for a multitude of reasons. And like I just said, you can see by how aggressive they've been today already that their commitment to winning is second to none.
I'll tell you what, that is a gold medal in moving on from Steven Stamkos. He's asked by TSN, hey, is there really anything there that you should, any bitterness towards Tampa? Look, man, I'm pissed they didn't give me an extension. I'm pissed they didn't want me back. I mean, I thought I poured out my soul there, and I still think I got game. But, hey, it would do me no favors, and it would do no favors to the Predators that just paid me a fortune. It would do me no favors to sit here and cry about it. So, no, I'm excited to be a Predator, and they made their decision. It is what it is. And I got to give them credit. I don't think you're going to see any Freddie Freeman crying moments like you did with him out of Steven Stamkos. But Julien Brisebois, the general manager, it is Brisebois, right, Ian? That's how you pronounce it?
Brisebois.
Julien Brisebois, the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who I'm not sold on as being that great of a general manager because I don't know what he was thinking by dumping Sergachev to go get Jake Gensel, but that's just me. Says that on letting Steven Stamkos walk in free agency, quote, I know the fans are disappointed. I know Steven's disappointed, and I'm disappointed. What? He continues. This is from Chris Johnston, who's with TSN. Says Brisebois said he felt that if he met Stamkos' financial expectations on a new contract, then the Tampa Bay Lightning, quote, would not be putting ourselves in the best position to chase championships moving forward. So basically, he said, yeah, we can't afford to pay him and still try to win the cup. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I mean, I understand personally, and again, this is without watching. I am not trying to compare myself to Kevin Weeks here. I mean, I watch the Predators, and then I watch whatever else is on whenever I'm not busy with something else, which is very rarely during the regular season and more so during the playoffs. But if I had to pick between a 34-year-old Steven Stamkos or I'm going to guess Jake Gensel's 28, 29 years old.
About to be, I think he's 29 for sure, maybe 30.
Okay. I'm taking Stamkos. And I guarantee you Stamkos would have given you a hometown discount. Like, if he's playing for 8 for you, I bet he would have played for them for 6. And I'm betting on Stamkos. I just think Stamkos is a better player right now. Now, they may look at it and they may say that 3 years down the road, when Gensel is 3 years into a 7-year deal.
Yeah, he'll be 30 at the start of the season.
So when 3 years from now, when Gensel's 33 and Stamkos is 37, that maybe it'll be a better deal for them. And that is part of the equation they got to figure out. But I would rather have Stamkos for 4 than Gensel for 7. I'm not a huge Gensel guy. And I know Gensel went to Carolina and put up numbers. I get it. He's not just a product of Sidney Crosby. But I wouldn't have given Gensel the money. This just in from Chris Johnson. Julian Brunette says NHL players in the cap era like Steven Stamkos don't sign their 4th contract well ahead of time. I think we've only signed a year early, and it was for Anze Kopitar. We were far along with Victor Hedman here. He'll probably be the second exemption. Brisebois says, I don't think we're going to gain much by going play-by-play here, especially right now because everything is raw and everything is so emotional, as there were a number of different structures that he felt could have worked. I don't know, man. When you give Gensel the money, it sounds to me like you wanted to pay Gensel, you didn't want to pay Stamkos, which, again, my question is this for the Predators, which is the reason why Tampa didn't want to pay the money because they think that Stamkos is all used up, that the tread's off the tires? Or is this taking advantage of their stupidity again, the way you did with the Tanner Jeannot trade, which they got themselves out of? Julian Brisebois on being known as the guy who cuts ties with Steven Stamkos. It comes with the job. Kurt says, man, I am so excited to watch this team in October. Me too, Kurt. Lance says, native Tennesseans weren't really watching hockey before the cup run for obvious reasons. We didn't grow up with hockey. Obviously, all the transplants from other places aren't like us. I don't know, man. I think anywhere that wins, fans get excited. Any sport, I don't think it matters. And I think the fans here get excited if they think that the Predators are a team that can win. And as a fan, I'll tell you right now, I'm excited. I don't know if this team can win the cup or not. I know that the moves they made today, though, and hearing Andrew Brunette talk about it and the excitement in his voice, they think that they have a team that can compete for the cup. And again, the margins are so thin in this sport that this could be the difference. What a fun day to be a Predators fan. That's it for us. We are out of here. The Cats Brewhouse Blitz is next. Stillman and company, the fallout from today. We'll do that tomorrow at 2.